Yukikaze! Perspective on it is it was a year that had a lot of shows coming out, very difficult to keep up with, but I still overall feel like the quality wasn't quite there on a lot of the shows. So we had a lot of stuff that was kind of sitting at the average and below average level, but not necessarily as many really top tier things as you would hope percentage-wise for the amount of stuff coming out. Definitely got our share of trash, but a lot of it was more the hot trash than, like, trash. Unless you count some of the things that I disqualified, like a lot of the stuff that was coming out of China. Yeah. Yeah, I think, honestly, it definitely goes beyond just this season as being terrible. You know, there's things that are just, like, bad by comparison, and then there's things that I want to have never existed, and this is one of them. You know what? Let me go ahead and pull up the trailer real quick.
ねえ、あなたは何になりたい？ここ
Have that displayed on my side. Just a little. I just moved.
こなら何にでもなれるよ。ここはエイデンアカデミー。バーチャルの世界で活躍したい子たちの学園。ここでは日々たくさんの生徒たちがなりたい自分を目指していろんな授業を受けているんだ。私ミラク、憧れのキズナアイちゃんみたいになりたくて日々活動中だけど、勢い任せで動いちゃうからよく失敗しちゃうんだ。でもたくさんの人とつながっていきたいから諦めずに活動頑張ってるよ。疲れだね。この子は同級生のクリス。とっても可愛いのに、ダンスも一回見ただけですぐ覚えちゃうすごい子なんだ。なぜか私に興味津々らしくて。
One sense, its biggest crime was that even as an anime about VTubers, I as a VTuber hated it.
誰よりも努力家でとっても頼りになるんだよ。私が目指す完璧なバーチャルアーティストになってみせる。そしてリズ、 すっごく器用でどんなことでもバーチャルアーティストの活動に生かしちゃうの。私も見習わなきゃな。こんなもんでしょ。この子はクモン。物静かだけどしっかり私たちを支えてくれる優しい人なんだ。そんな私ミラク、そしてクリス、ノエル、リズ、クオン、この5人で組んだユニットがファストライブ。性格も個性もバラバラな私たちだけど、だからこそ一緒に進むことで見える世界があるはず。
Yeah.
仲
Like,
間たち
if
と
being
絆愛ちゃんみ
just
たいなバー
bad
チャルアー
wasn't
ティストを目指
enough,
して
the fact that it tried to market actively NFTs
絆のアリル
is
2023年
unforgivable.
放送開始。
Also, the fact that it somehow got a second season? I don't know, it calls it season. That could just be some kind of marketing thing. Yes. So Snap's number 10 entry here is my home hero.
娘よ、君の彼氏を殺しました。
And you don't see a lot of anime like this in the genre, which is part of why this made this list for me. I definitely give a certain amount of points for
昨日
something
までの
being
自分が
a
どれ
standout
ほ
and
ど幸せだった
unusual.
か。
And this had very strong monster vibes for me,
母さん、
which to me is one of kind of the great,
哲夫
if
さん
underrepresented
あの
classic
夫婦
anime.
絶対何か隠してます。
今日一、俺らはなんだ、答えろ。
子供はね、親が守らなきゃ。
お父さん
あいつマジで殺す。
死んじゃったのかな。
Oh yeah.
そんな人死んでしまえばいいのに。
あんなやつ殺すんじゃなかった。いや、殺すべきだった。いや。
Yeah, so it was a little bit too much of a cliffhanger for you, perhaps? Yeah? Very true. Not only that, but there's really not a lot of time to even get through one sitting of most of the anime. That was definitely one of the big challenges that I had this year, was even just keeping up with stuff. And I know I had a lot of IRL things going on, but even with that, just the sheer bulk with like 50 plus new anime coming out sometimes in a single season, not even counting any of the like continuing series or remakes or anything, pretty overwhelming. I mean, it makes something like these top 10 lists even more valuable for the casual anime viewers, but also it's just I can't imagine how anyone who isn't watching anime as a full-time job could possibly really keep up with everything at this stage. Yeah, cover some of the stuff that that you weren't able to get to, or that wasn't quite your forte in terms of genres. I will try to keep major spoilers to a minimum, but sometimes when you're trying to talk about what makes a series great, it can't be avoided. Yeah, one of the interesting things to me, well, kind of interesting anecdotally, I should say, about My Home Hero, I didn't actually even find the time to finish it, but it still made my top 10 list. And usually, as a rule, if I haven't finished something, it's kind of disqualified, but that's not really a hard rule. It's more of like, I usually feel that I don't have enough data to properly judge something if I haven't watched it all the way through. But this series, I went ahead and gave it a spot just because I felt it was remarkable enough in terms of the sort of series it was, and how rare it is for us to get that kind of content in anime to deserve a spot. No. That was my number 2. Yeah. It's also, in some senses, a bit of a hard watch. If you're not in the right mental and emotional state, this might not be a series that you can watch every day. Yeah, and to be fair, also, that is part of the struggle that we really had this year with the sheer number of things coming out and to keep up with. It was very easy for things to literally get pushed off of your watch list. For instance, Crunchyroll, I think, has a maximum of like 20 shows or something like that on your watch list. But with the amount of stuff coming out, well, I should say on the portion of the watch list that shows up on like your front page. But with the number of shows coming out, that meant that some things were just not even like showing up on your page anymore, even though you started watching them and had added them to the watch list. And that can make it really hard to keep up with things sometimes. That and again, the sheer number of stuff coming out, like I frequently didn't even get past watching stuff on Crunchyroll to look at other platforms. So certain series that might have been really good and worth checking out kind of fell through the cracks just because they were someplace obscure, or like who. Is it the one that we talked about in the previous? Oh, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, we didn't talk about that one before. But that one did look interesting. Yeah, it's the like unkillable guy and the girl with the bad luck that kills everything she touches, and telling me that I can't remember it either. Undead Unluck, I think it was. No, I think that's pretty much it. Like, this is definitely one of the series where pretty much anything that you can say about it is going to be a spoiler. But I will say, if you enjoy, like, grim nail biters, maybe also if you're a fan of, like, death game kind of stuff, if you liked things like Death Note, but we're hoping for it to be maybe a little more real or gritty, then this would be a series that would. Kamikatsu, working for God.
これより我が息子浦部由紀とは結びの儀に入る。
Okay.
行ってこい由紀と。
元気になった。あとはこのレバーを私、あそこの食堂で働いてるアルラルって言います。
どっかで見たことがあるようなファンタジー世界。やっぱりこれは夢にまで見た異世界生活。この1ヶ月俺がやったことといえば農作業、家畜の世話、酒造り。俺が思い描いていた異世界生活とはだいぶ違うが、案外悪くないのかもしれない。あれは？
この国には修正制度といって国からの指示で自らの命を絶つ決まりがあるんです。
なんでこいつらが死ななきゃならない！
御霊様は必ず救ってくださる。
おい、救えよ。
I think it's also worth mentioning that
やっと呼んでくれた。
a show that displays a shocking amount of mastery.
死より暗い恐怖に沈め。
Yes, it's terrible,
君の神様だ。
この世
it's
界、
intentionally
宗教の神を
terrible.
作り出す。
神なき世
We
界
can
の
prove
神様活
even
動。
that it's not
2023
just
年
that they
4
use
月
terrible
放送
CGI
開始。
because of something like budget.
僕の信者
Like, they have these crazy Sakuga moments that definitely, ate a lot of budget. And I remember when I was watching it the first time, I kept wondering to myself, is this, a case of they don't have budget, or is there something else going on? And the first couple episodes, I couldn't really decide. But, no. It sure is. And, go ahead. Yeah? Yeah, and so the whole show is almost this like meta conversation about like trash anime and the genres, and it like purposely uses every bad element, but it also purposely uses like every element and sort of subverts itself at every turn. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's that take on it too, right? Like, it's a shit post, but it's a funny shit post. Yeah. Are you thinking of ghost stories? Yeah. Yeah, but I do think I do think it was done with intent. And you know, maybe that intent wasn't super highbrow, but it displayed enough knowledge and mastery and self-awareness that I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt that it did at least some of it intentionally. I'll give a kind of a slight spoiler here in that I definitely ranked this a bit higher, so we'll see it come up again in the list a little later. It's a totally fair take. I think in my case I gave it a little extra credit because of the fact that I feel like it will be a series that lives on to some degree, at least in like some kind of cult status. And I definitely give kind of bonus points to series that I think you know, had a major impact on anime or will you know, continue to form the discussion or influence other series beyond the current season. Totally fair. Alright. Next up, coming in at number 9 on Eastlink, is The Masterful Cat is Depressed Again Today. It actually took me pretty long to get around to checking this one out. But there's a lot of beautiful animation in it, which is honestly kind of undersold by this trailer that focuses a lot on these kind of not that great CG shots.
一緒に住んでるのに私知らないことばっかりだな。
I would say, yeah, it's definitely healing anime, also a little bit of slice of life and like
また
sitcom.
あの猫さん来てますけど。猫さんはユキちゃんっていうの？
我が輩は猫である。しかし、ただの猫ではない。
That's fair, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't. Sometimes they're more just like the moe genre, which this one isn't. So there is that. Sure. So the Masterful Cat basic plot premise is that technically the main character is a office worker that is pretty relatable in today's world. They're overworked, overstressed, and have a difficult time, care of themselves and their own basic needs. And they rescue a kitten out in the snow, who coincidentally is, as I recall, named technically Yuki. And they end up kind of growing into this very large, oversized cat that is bipedal and larger than human size. The reasons for that are not clear and kind of part of the running jokes of the series. A lot of the other characters think it's like a furry in a fursuit, kind of cruising around town or something like that. Nobody's really sure. And the owner herself, a lot of the time, is very confused as to whether or not her cat is a normal cat. But in any case, yeah, he has very strong kind of Black Butler vibes about him in that he's, incredibly proficient in everything he does, and it manages the entire household, goes out and does the shopping, does the cooking, cleaning, and basically takes care of his owner and kind of heals her in body and spirit, all for the sake of earning his cans of cat food. Yes. Yeah, they're not for everybody, and I think definitely the people who have certain types of jobs and things like that tend to relate to them more than others do. But for a small bear, as the joke tends to be in the series. Um, so I would say that yeah, some of the CGI wasn't great, but it also definitely wasn't painful to look at. I've definitely seen a lot worse. But it was weird to me again that they focused on it in the trailer because it was not by any means the most appealing aspects of the show. It probably was just whatever footage they had to work with. Yep. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it to any anime. Big fan of cats. Or someone who's just looking for something lighthearted and easy watching. Well, it did have its emotional moments as well. That's fair, but unfortunately, it is also one of the genres that's like the least likely to get translated. Um, there's definitely a couple of sort of subgenres of anime that we almost never see get dubs, and healing anime is one of. Another is usually that are very very reliant verbal humor. Frequently don't see dubs because it just doesn't translate well. anything that needs like translator footnotes in order to be understood. Alright. Moving on then. We're at our number 9 pick. I'll go.
俺は呪われている。
Start that over. Alright.
俺は呪われている。
Correct. I did not get around to this
殺
one.
される。未来でそれを思い知らされた。どうすればいい？分かりきったことだ。すべての竜を狩り尽くす。
ごきげんよう、人間の諸君。滅ぶがいい。
俺も竜を滅ぼしたいんだ。未来の俺たちが果たせなかったことを今度こそやろう。静粛に死ね。
They're not doing it with everything, because they didn't do it with the other series that premiered this game, but
大丈夫
I would say that's a change to the meta from one of the other anime that we'll talk
今
about
の
later.
強さがあればと、どれだけ悔やんだか。
だったら俺にくれよ。俺には今強さがいるんだ。
Yeah.
お前はなぜそうまで竜を滅ぼしたい？守るため。未来の俺が失ったもの、俺がこれから失うはずのもの、すべて守る。
ようこそ。風も君たちを歓迎している。
間もなくこの国は死の恐怖が多いです。
殺したい、いっぱい殺したい。
狩人の意地を見せろ。
6つの血族、そのことごとくを打ち滅ぼし、神よ、狩れ。
この未来を打ち砕け。
熱竜の気は
Ah, so it's organically edgy, not just trying to sell an edgelord skin.
始めよう。世界の運命を変える戦いを。私とお前の熱竜の物語を。
Don't worry, it's just a greater, dire vampiric Dracoly. Fair enough. But literally downloads all of his memories. Oh my gosh, I just realized I have not had my microphone in place on my side for my audio this entire time, and probably nobody on my end has been able to hear me.
Oh god. There are 2 agents on screen. Thankfully, both seem to be muted.
Muted? Uh-oh. Your audio hasn't been coming through on my side this entire time, apparently. Hang on. Something has gone horribly. Yeah, no, there's been like, we're just talking about anime, just chatting,
Don't
there's
worry,
no audio the
it's
whole
an
time.
improvement.
Okay, hang on. Testing, go ahead and talk. Okay.
At least it's early on in the stream. Only. Oh wow, never mind.
Oh, I know what's going on. Okay, hang on.
Oh god, I can hear him now. My ears. They bleed.
Need to add another source. Remember how to do that. No, for your side. Well, he was temporarily because of a change I made, but now he won't be able to again. It's a weird quirk of my headset that I use. Which also probably means that nobody could hear the people on the collab I did with Pixel the other day either. Mostly, probably. It just brought me back. Where is it? Can't remember audio output capture.
Since High Dive, My Home Hero, The Masterful Cat, and God in the Godless World, I believe we're all Crunchyroll.
Yeah, everything except for Ragna Crimson, I think was. Okay, try talking.
Talking? Am I talking?
Yeah, there we go.
You hear me?
Can you hear him?
All right.
Pixel?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? No.
Unfortunately.
That's
All
okay.
right. Well, with everything going around.
Some filters, but
Ooh, am I coming through kind of stretchy?
you're definitely pegging the audio every time. So let me.
Oh, I'm peaking?
Yeah, at least on my side, you are.
Yeah, I'm not going to turn that down, but.
Can you try talking again?
How does this sound now?
Yeah, that's
Am
a
I
little
still
better.
peaking?
You're still hitting like the yellow and the low end of the red, but you're not just going all the way to the end of the bar every time anymore.
Yeah, that's where I generally keep most people. Just barely nipping the yellow.
You know. Okay. All right, I think that fixes the technical issues.
Okay, but well, I was finishing up about Ren. It's very interesting to see on that because he leaves those people and goes off to do his own thing. But at the same point, it also drops us in with new character because honestly, like the characters you spend the first hour and a half with, other than the main character, do not show up in the rest of the series.
Interesting.
And for as long as it is, I would say there is the antagonist group because it's going to be a greater extended series, 24 episodes. We've got the first half of the season. The next half will start next season with the winter gap. But there are 2 main characters with 1 supporting character in the opening show, and we get a 3rd, possibly main character at the 3rd to last episode or 2nd to last episode.
I couldn't tell you since I haven't watched this one.
Yep, it's just a very tight, you get to see why this guy goes through all this does. And they don't just turn him into an edgelord either. It's not just, oh, I'm dark. It's funny enough, I would say Ragna the Blood Edge would be the best comparison to this character in way too many forms, honestly. He is here to kill every goddamn dragon on the planet, and he is there to do whatever it takes to do that. Okay, with that though, I think we can move on to the number 8 slot, if you're ready for that.
Okay. So coming in at number 8 on my side, is Magical Destroyers. Now this was actually one of the series that Agent really talked up to me initially. And, it definitely had some very solid animation. It had some really weird stuff going on. If you're a fan of old school anime,
if you're an 80s fan, I would say definitely.
The 80s and 90s kind of like offbeat anime, things like the original Fooly Cooly, then this is definitely going to be a show for you.
Yep. On the other hand, this is also very much in the Mahou Shoujo genre, just with some punk rock themes to it. If the visuals were giving that away.
It's almost ironically Mahou Shoujo, though. It definitely, like, it uses the Mahou Shoujo tropes, and it's technically a Mahou Shoujo, but it's also an anime that doesn't feel like a Mahou Shoujo anime, because it takes it in kind of a different direction. It's a anime fans' interpretation in their head of a Mahou Shoujo anime. I guess would be a good way to put it.
I want to say where it, because even the Mahou Shoujo, I was like, the 3 girls in the tab, the magical girls of the show, are kind of the supporting cast, honestly, though.
Correct, yeah. And that's part of why it's kind of weird for that genre of show. They're like the Mahou Shoujo characters kind of form the harem, for the harem aspect of the show, and it's really a show that kind of in some ways tries to be all the genres, because it's a show about and from the perspective of an anime fan.
which honestly, it's like saying that I didn't quite put it together, but this does feel kind of like a love letter to older anime too, especially with where they bring in the old Taku for an episode.
Yeah.
Because well, as for the main story of this one, it is a world where otaku culture, not just anime fandom, but the otaku culture of the military guys, the car guys, the sports guys, that's just outlawed. You can't be a super fan of anything really.
Yeah.
And it does go ahead.
Sorry, in that sense, it reminds me a little bit of a few other series like Library Wars that are really kind of at their core heavily about censorship and kind of the fight that the medium needs to take to be seen seriously as an art form, and to fight against the censorship that it is constantly inundated with, especially in Japan. But, a different type of censorship we're starting to see creep in terms of what Western companies are willing to invest in is also now influencing the genre. And, I think we're seeing a lot of artistic outcry against that in this series.
I can kind of understand that one, but like while it is censorship, I wouldn't even say it's corporations or that. It's fans and creators. This show, I don't want to go too much into the spoilers, but it's what you get to know everything behind the story. It very much is a fan versus creator story.
That's a valid take as well, I suppose. But I don't think those are mutually exclusive. I think that, all of these forms of censorship and influences on the creative process are kind of represented within the show and are kind of, something that this and other shows like it have tried to address from their own artistic perspective, in order to have this sort of conversation or dialogue with the audience about these issues.
Which is really, because honestly, I don't want to spoil too much on it, because every episode on this show is a bit of a trip. It dives into something different, something new, a different fandom, a different culture in these fandoms, how different fans react, both toxic, old, and new people coming into them, and how they all have to interact with each other.
And it definitely has a lot of strong kind of mindfuck aspects to it, for lack of a better term. So, that I feel references back to things like Evangelion, and the old
that 90s genre of where a lot of this stuff got esoteric and weird.
Yeah.
This show asks a lot of questions, and its answer is, I don't know, fuck you. Here's even weirder shit.
Yeah, and to that end, I feel like there's also some influence from outside of anime there too, from things like heavy metal and wizards.
Those are two shows I didn't think I'd ever hear. It's always amazing what people know in the current day, but yeah, no, I will definitely agree with that. Oh, all right. I have a bit more to say about it, but this will also pop up a little later on my list. This was Yuki is number 8, but this will pop up higher up later for me.
Totally fair. All right. Coming in now at Agents number 8, we have Shangri-La Frontier. I will turn that on for it. There we go.
Okay, I know this one, a lot of people are kind of looking at that like, oh, an anime about video games and playing video games. This sounds like it wants to be base boilerplate sword art. This is not that. This is a a genre that I will say is definitely inspired by Sword Art's later seasons, but has evolved into its own thing. Because this very much is a show about. See, it feels weird to say it. This is a show about gamers being gamers. Why you get into a game, what drives you into that, and what that feels like in a world.
Not only that, but also a show about being a competent representation of games themselves and what makes them appealing to play. We don't see that a lot in anime. Usually somehow that gets bungled, even though it should be such an easy and obvious one for a culture that has so much overlap and crossover.
Yep, this is about one of two I now have that has really hit that mark. The other one, I believe, it'd be I don't like getting hurt, so I put all my stats into defense.
Even that
But
one,
even
I don't feel like that one did as good of a job as this one by any stretch.
No, this is the reason why this one is on a top 10 for the year, though. This one, I see this show, and oh my god, I love this rabbit. I love this fucking rabbit. Dear God, why is a Yakuza boss rabbit so cool? This is a game I want to play. Everything about this world, how this game is set up, its characters. I want to play this MMO. I want to do this. I'm sorry, I'm watching that and I'm just like, I just love this rabbit. There's so many aspects. It's even from a game design standpoint. I love the way this world was built. Because it feels intuitive to players. It feels like something I want to be in.
And we just won't even address the whole nude bird mask guy aspect of it.
No, that wasn't in this season. Neither was she. Is this season 2's trailer?
Nope. This is just the trailer for the show.
Huh, okay, this is also an extended season. So this will be going 24, so it hasn't finished yet.
Yeah. We've gotten about the first 12 episodes so far, and I think this is showing us a few little bits and pieces that haven't quite happened yet.
Yep, well, which is also soon to happen, which,
Yeah, which also, because we haven't seen the ending, makes it hard to give a perfect representation of where they should be in the lists. But I will say this one ranked a little higher in my list, and I'll touch on it again a little later. Well, actually, it was my number 7, so I would have touched on it next.
So yeah, I'm just gonna throw that up there too.
Yeah, we'll just kind of combine. But I think it's definitely interesting that the kind of driving aspect from the game, and we sort of vaguely touched on this already, is gamer pride. Like that is the main character's motivation. It's not like some death game or anything like that. It's simply a gamer playing for the purpose of their own enjoyment in the game and their own sort of meta goals that they've set for themselves, rather than any like their own skill and technical challenges that they're putting themselves up to, rather than anything specific that the game is forcing them to do or that some outside force has put them up to. And the stakes are just their own pride, their own, self-enjoyment, and their own motivation for their own self-mastery goals.
Like, the best comparison I can make is, if you've played Pokemon Silver or Gold, and you've ran into the legendary dogs early in the game, and it runs away, it forever sticks in your mind that I want to catch that fucking son of a bitch. It's one of those, this game has organically set a goal for you, and you are now, I want another round. I want to go. I'm beating this. I am doing this show. I am beating this character. It is that raw driving point that makes so many people come back to different video games.
I will say that there's also this kind of weird romance piece that I feel might be a little bit tacked on. But fortunately, it doesn't occupy a lot of screen time, and I feel like it has other narrative goals besides just that. So, while it hasn't played out yet, I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt and see where that goes.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting to see the different characters in this too, because once again, as a show that's there to be a representation for gamers, they actually do a swath of different types of people. Our main character, like the main character we follow, the bird-faced naked man, which, come on, if you play a lot of games, you know that guy. You know this character. He is a trash. He is a guy who loves to go out and be absolute trash. Take these old school games and just break them over his knee.
Yeah, in fact, I immediately thought of one of my other VTuber friends that I knew from before either of us were VTubers. My old guildmaster from a cell phone MMO who would put bird heads in all of her characters.
Yeah. This is very much that. His support and the supporting cast is, you have the love interest we talked about. We had somebody get into a game who, I don't know if I like games. Games really aren't my thing. Oh, this guy might be picking this up. I'm going to try to get into this. And while we haven't gotten too much on this character, everything we've heard about them is, oh, this is at max level, top guild. Oh, when this guy's walking around, you know who they are, person. Which either this character has innate skill or
at least has sunk a lot of time into it.
Exactly.
I would throw in too that, it's like you said, we're seeing a big cut of different types, and so it's not just that either. We've also got the people who are motivated by being a player killer. We've got the people who are motivated by achieving specific in-game achievements. We've got the literal pro gamer. We've got the person who usually plays things because they're terrible and is now playing something else because they want a comparison between, that and a juxtaposition between, the usual garbage they play and something good so that they can appreciate just how bad the garbage that they usually play is.
And on top of that too, with all of these main characters we kind of follow who do pop in at kind of a little odd spots of the story and organically, we also get them in a world that feels really great. My favorite character isn't any one of the main cast, the actual gamers. It is characters in this world, the people that should draw you in the most. The Yakuza boss, blacksmith, rabbit, Shogun. And his adorable magical daughter.
One of many, many children.
He's a rabbit. He gets on every level, he gets away with it.
Oh yeah, I mean, as one might expect of a high-level rabbit boss.
And he is just this. You can feel there's more lore and story behind them, but he just comes off as just oh yeah, no. When I turn in this quest, I'm waiting to see what he says next. Let's see what the next stage on this is.
All right. That said, yeah. If you're into isekai adjacent anime, if you're into things that do just a really solid job with great animation and sakuga moments, if you like things that have really solid world building, and enjoying these kinds of fantasy elements to your series, but aren't afraid to have it get a little bit silly on you, in a way that isn't immersion breaking, then this is definitely a good recommendation.
Yeah. Although I will say I've showed this off to a couple of my friends, and we've all started a game of anytime they ever head to the local game shop, how many of the background not games can we spot and actually name them?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Next up is Agents number 7, since Shangri-La Frontier was also my number 7. You want to introduce this one?
Okay. When you get the trailer up on that too. Discord. Oop, oh, no, come on. There we go. This is going to be Under Ninja, and go ahead and play that for now because I'm going to have to talk a little bit about the oh god,
Ooh, these soldiers look really bad.
I'm not going to say this is perfectly animated. There are some very beautiful scenes in it, but it's ooh, that opening cue. This is a, how do I describe this show? Because this is probably the hardest show I'm going to have to describe. This is a modern day story about modern day ninja. This is not fantasy in any shape, form, or form. This is not sci-fi, almost. This is about what a modern day ninja would be like in Japan.
So
And how
kind of
weird
an
that would be.
alternate modern day.
No. This is just, what if ninja were real?
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's what an alternate modern day is, right?
I would call this more like Men in Black.
これ着て忍者ってことね。
Right, so it proposes that they secretly do exist within our
Yeah.
actual world.
Yep. And one of the crazy, it's because I don't know if you're familiar with a YouTuber called Gaijin Goomba and his What Makes a Ninja Ninja. They go in.
Oh, sorry, I thought that was
What?
actually a question for me.
Go ahead on that, actually.
Oh, I am familiar with Gaijin Goomba, but I've only seen like one episode of their stuff. I'm not a regular viewer, so I haven't seen that one.
It's a very good breakdown on like, okay, what is an actual ninja? You know, it's like they're not a loudmouth, orange wearing, shonen protagonist. It's like,
Yeah, it's
this
kind
is-
of weird that that's become people's go-to reference now.
Yeah. This is, what are ninja? They're not combat specialists. They're intelligence specialists. They're there to be not noticed, not observed, or not paid attention to.
Unseen.
Yeah. In whatever way that makes sense of, okay, were they not actually seen, or is this just something you don't, pay attention to? The main character, one of the quirks I love they bring up with him is he keeps track of what names are most common in what prefectures of Japan.
Yeah, I mean, on some of the sort of the note that you brought up, I think it's really important to note that the reason that Naruto was set up the way that he was is specifically because he was supposed to be a really bad ninja. So he's not really a good example for people to use of what ninja are supposed to be.
Yep. On the other aspect of this, I will say the animation it's ugly, but in a good way. If you've ever seen what that makes sense of, like, this isn't supposed to look pretty, it's supposed to look good, supposed to, which not to say it doesn't have bad animation. It has some really great sakuga, some really creative spots. It's just everything looks grungy, which that opening really kind of sums it up. And once again, this is a darker show. This is part of the edgelord stuff that came out in the fall season, because dear God, there was so much of that.
Yeah, this
But
one
this
flew a little
show-
under my radar because the production values and everything kind of told me that it might not really be worth my time. And with so many things to choose from, it just didn't make the selection cut.
Yeah, I would definitely say this is a. If you're ready to watch something that'll completely throw you off, this is a show for that, because once again, this is a spy show when you break it down to it, and for the vast majority of the show, you're not even quite sure what the stakes are. Like the main cast are ordered to basically, we need to gather intel at this place because something's going on that should not be happening. Sorry. And it's coming down to, not only are these people going here trying to do this, but you see their higher ups like, okay, we just deployed a fairly big squad to this area. Who approved this? And they're like, well, it's discretionary orders, compartmentalized. Oh, I don't like the sound of that. So the first arc of the first 4 episodes of this are everybody just kind of like, you know, slowly walking in, like listening, poking at each other, not quite sure, is this guy, am I working with this guy, or is he a double agent, or is he trying to kill me because of other reasons? And just, it keeps throwing you off, and again and again and again. And I say it's mostly a modern day, although I will say the very last 3 or 4 episodes get a bit sci-fi. We have a man whose brain's been transplanted into a cat riding a motorcycle that's piloting itself at the end, but and you don't know how to even respond to that, do you?
Nope. I mean, it is what it is. It's anime being anime.
And until we hit that point, we have no idea about like how crazy this world could get. Because it's a little bit of spoiler, but that cat has been around for probably a good chunk of the series at this point. And then all of a sudden, we start an episode of the show, and we're following the cat, and it's kind of talking in his head. It's just like, oh, we're kind of seeing a pet's perspective, because it very much still is thinking like a cat. Until he's like, hey, I recognize that guy. He's the guy who decapitated me. Wait, I used to be human. Shit!
Sudden realization.
I'm a cat!
I don't know why
But
that just seemed like a Lonely Island song lead-in.
I can't see that now. But this show does that to you throughout the entire thing. Like at one point, there's this fat, balding, homeless man trying to give his breast milk to children.
Oh no!
And it's infinitely weirder than it sounds.
That's concerning. If it's weirder than it sounds.
All right, because once again, the main arc, like the first 4 episodes of the show, really set up a good feel for it, because it's about a Russian coming to Japan trying to become a ninja. Because he was sent there by the Russian mafia to try to infiltrate them, because they're holding his daughter hostage.
Now I'm just thinking of the Russia sushi guy from Durr.
And yeah. Well, it's
Russia sushi. It's good.
Yeah. Well, it's like you meet this guy at the the airport. Oh, hey, Hat, welcome. You meet this guy at the airport, and it's like, reasons for coming to this country, business or pleasure. I want to become ninja. And he says it in English. Like English.
Nice.
And he's a Russian. And even the guy at the passport is just like, the fuck?
Well, I mean, they'd be more likely to understand English than Russian.
And the whole show just does this to you from beginning to end. And you have like the writer behind this one. I was trying to look him up. Let's see if I can pull him up, because there are a couple showrunners from this season that are just absolutely like what are you doing a show like this? And let's see here. This was, I think it was this original creator. Yeah, let's look him up. Kongo Hazazawa. Boys on the Run, I Am Hero, Resentment are his stories. And honestly, those are, and this is supposed to be his breakout into the mainstream, but if all of that doesn't sell Under Ninja to you, I don't have anything more.
Fair enough.
I don't know if you happen to recognize those.
Nope,
Oh,
none of those sound familiar to me.
You got an ad, but this is going to be a creator I am going to have eyes out for, because I haven't seen a series like this. Period. Yeah, no, period. I was trying to like comparison. Nope, this was just unusually weird in every aspect. Coughing a little bit there.
Yeah. And it caught me off guard. Okay, so, if we're done with that one, the next up was, on my side, Kamikatsu again. I did mention earlier that it was a little higher on my list. And yes, this series was very, very trashy, but I ranked it where I did because I feel like it was more likely to be memorable and influential on future series than a lot of the things below it. I think this won't be the last time that we see some of these kinds of techniques employed. I think it was also very interesting that they had so many visual style shifts throughout the series. And that was part of also why I felt that some of the things like the bad CGI were maybe used kind of intentionally. Because they were very clearly incorporating lots of different styles, pixel art, more standard 2D animation, bad 3D CGI, crazy Sakuga camera angle cuts, and sometimes doing a lot of these things simultaneously or rapidly shifting back and forth between them in a single episode.
Not to mention the best kind of Ichi that honestly almost puts this one in the I can't believe it's not hentai category.
Oh yeah, that is also one thing that, I want to warn about. If you have a low tolerance for sexual content in an anime, this one is definitely not for you. And if you're not the kind of person
if you don't
who
have
enjoys...
a medium tolerance, I would say even, like, you have to go into this one. It's like, watch this at home with no one around or a buddy. You can just sit there and laugh your ass off to it. This will do every kind of dark, pervy thing you can get away with it, not a hentai.
Including, and sometimes especially, the things that are really attributed to being like anime being on its usual bullshit. So, if you aren't able to tolerate like weird BDSM gags and like even pseudo like
they kill a guy,
sussy content
him as a woman, and then sexually abuse him throughout the rest of the show.
Yeah. So with that in mind, yes, there's a lot of things in there that, even though they're used for humor, are very, inherently dark themes in a lot of cases. And if you can't handle that kind of thing, stay clear of this one. But if a series that uses a lot of those elements that you're used to seeing in other anime and does so in a way that is kind of humorous and undermining the typical use of those, or lampooning it, then this might be a good choice for you.
Yeah. One other thing I will say I didn't mention before is the cast for this one. The worst kind of person you are, the worse the karma medic equivalent in this world will bite you in the ass. The main character on this show is very much somebody who just wants to live a mediocre life. He has no points of grandeur, no designs to be the ruler of the world. It's just life has dealt him a pretty shitty hand, to say the least.
Life did him dirty.
I would put him in like the top 5 of worst isekai protagonist lives. Like ReZero sits at number 1, but this guy is a couple notches below him. Just a couple. And he very much does not care, does not want any parts of anything. He just, leave me alone, let me live a peaceful life.
All right. So yeah, that's pretty much my my take on that one. And moving right along to Agents number 6.
Yeah, but one last, Kamikatsui. I want her to be the gremlin of trash. That is now the goddess of trash anime.
The trash goddess. Although Aqua, I think, literally was given that title within the series.
List so far, we've had quite a few at this point. We can kind of go through it. I will be posting this up on the my Twitter link later on. I think you will probably do it on hers too. You want to see the full listing on all that. But all right, let's dig into. Hold on a second. Let me get prepped up again. Too many things up right now. All right, go ahead and play my number 6. Now this one was one I was surprised didn't make your list. Hell's Paradise.
Yeah. I'll let you talk about what you liked about it first, and then I'll explain why it didn't quite make my cut.
All right, for me, this one was honestly, the animation on this one is one that pushed it as high as it did for me. This was a very interesting setup, a very interesting world. Just seeing all of these bandits and Shogun apostles in dealing with these monsters who, this was not supposed to be a fantasy world. This was not supposed to be a things living like this. This is almost a journey to the center of the earth with a feudal Japan coating on it for me. Which, if you would like to go in on some of the stuff that kept it off for you.
Sure. So yeah, I definitely agree that it definitely had some very beautiful animation to it. And I think that they did a pretty good job with the character development and even the world building. But I think what kept it off for me is it just felt a little bit too run-of-the-mill shonen. Which, it's a fairly masterful representation of it thus far. But I don't think this is a series that people will end up remembering in future seasons. I think this one is just going to kind of fall into that sort of, shonen hole, if you will. That it because there's just so much competition for it in such a saturated genre, I don't think it's going to hold any real special place for people in the future.
Once again, I can definitely see that. Unlike even a lot of the stuff that is lower on this list, that is not a show that I can say has anything in particular that stands out to me. There's no character. I can't even name the main character's name. I can't name the main character's name on most of these, honestly. But yeah, no, I definitely agree. It's just, this is a masterful representation of shonen, and that is I will say, my personal taste, while this isn't my top 10 list, did play a bigger part, and even stuff I would say probably is higher quality overall and more memorable. But a masterfully done shonen, especially a shonen that isn't afraid to stretch its 16 plus legs.
That's fair. I definitely don't begrudge it as a choice for a top 10 list. Especially, if it is on more kind of like personal, allowing for more personal bias. It definitely was a good ride, and I wouldn't say that there's anything that precludes me from recommending it. It's just one of those things that sits at like probably an 8 out of 10 for me, but also doesn't have anything to give it like staying power. So I think that's the only reason it didn't really quite make the cut for me. But like I said, I definitely I respect it as a top 10 choice.
Which we've already had some on here that are questionable on that end, but Kamagatsui. Yeah, but I'll definitely agree with that. I honestly, that's now like I put it on here on top of this. I honestly do not have a lot to say about it. Too much. I think you are making a good point on that end.
Yeah, I mean that's just kind of why I couldn't justify it, right? Like there wasn't anything that was so unique and so cool about it that it really had to be on there. It was just shonen being shonen. Which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just we get a lot of it.
Yep. Hey, you don't recognize this? Once again, it's like I'll post the names and everything after we're done on this if you want to jump over to that to see it. But these are ones we would recommend. These are the top 10 from our year, and we have seen quite a bit of that. But with that, Yuki, would you like to take us up to your number 5?
Yes. So my number 5 is the 100 Girlfriends Who Really, 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 Really Love You. I will go ahead and switch. There we go. So I'm not gonna lie. I was thinking this was just going to be like a hot trash pick for me. I really wasn't expecting this to have much in the way of redeeming value.
I've heard so many people like, oh, this is just a harem anime.
And it is a harem anime, for sure. It makes no secret of that up front. And if I hadn't given it a chance, I would have completely written it off as just like, no real value to it, right? But having watched it up to this point, not only did it have like really stellar animation within that series type, and really strong character designs, but it managed to deliver very surprisingly well on character development for the number of characters that it was introducing and keeping up over the course of the series. Thus far, at least. Everyone had something unique about them. Everyone had, like, a crazy, strange backstory, their own whole introduction arc. And the real appeal to me is that it's, again, kind of a masterful, simultaneously a show that shows mastery of the genre while also intentionally subverting itself. And so from that perspective, I felt like it was a very strong choice, particularly because we didn't actually get very many like harem or ecchi anime this year. If you look back,
really didn't.
Yeah, if you look back, even though we had a lot more anime than usual, that particular genre was really, really dry compared to most years. We got at most 1, maybe 2 series like that per season. And they usually, for the most part, weren't of very high quality either. So, this one being of high enough quality, that I felt it really, kind of blew the other ones that we saw this year out of the water, made me want to give it a spot on the list, because, it was at least noteworthy compared to all of the competition that we saw this year within its category.
I'll definitely give you that. Well, once again, we should do character sheets with our likes and dislikes on those at some point too. Now, romance, high school, slice of life, rom-com are all the genres I dislike the most generally. So this one was never going to make my top 10. Almost guaranteed on that end.
Yeah, especially since, as you mentioned earlier, you're taking more of the personal bias standpoint on the top 10 list.
I very much am, and I did not watch all of this. This is, like I said before, is not up any of my genres at all. This is the kind of show I bounce off the hardest. This is masterfully done. It didn't feel like, oh, we're speedrunning the harem. It felt like, no, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna make a connection. When I describe this to other people, I don't say this is a harem. I say this is a romance anime where the main character dates 100 other women.
There is also something else I want to bring up about this series that made it noteworthy for me. And it's something that we've seen a little bit here and there with a couple of other series recently. I feel that the harem genre is slowly evolving a little bit. And we're starting to see a little bit less of it being this, silly, kind of unattainable thing that's just sold as a fantasy. And we're starting to see some of these shows show signs of it kind of maturing a bit, in the sense that it's starting to gradually embody more of the real world, polyamory sort of lifestyles that real people actually have sometimes. And we saw a little bit of that with trying to blank on the name of that other show now, which is weird because I was just rewatching it the other day with a friend.
That's how much of an impact it had.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely more of a hot trash show. But there was another show this season about, a harem that was, a main character openly dating multiple other, female characters. And that one did not show the level of mastery that this one did, but it also... that show, compared to this one, although it took a step kind of in that direction with the characters being open about it and officially being partners with the other characters and actually having a designated relationship with them rather than everybody just being kind of at arm's length the entire time or kind of being cheated on with each other. They still, in that one, referred to everything that they were doing as 2-timing or 3-timing, which put this kind of negative connotation on everything that they were doing. A difference that you see in this one, the way that it takes this kind of maturing that I mentioned in a further step in that direction, is all of the characters are definitely completely on board right from the beginning with the fact that the main character is dating the other characters. And not only are they okay with that, not only do they, give their full consent for that to be the case, but in many cases, they're actively, spending time with and enjoying the company of the other female characters as well. And I think that is a big shift that we're starting to see. I mean, we've definitely seen characters be friends with the other potential matches in other series, but never in a case where they were both actively dating the person and actively, having a girlfriend title or something like that with them. And I think, this is something that, because it kind of embodies that shift in the genre, noteworthy from that sense, in that it'll probably have an impact on future shows where we start to see them being less of this kind of like, no, we can't let anybody ever kiss, because if that happens, then they're a couple, and then it's cheating if anybody else does anything or something like that, and moving more towards this kind of like poly or open relationship setup that more accurately resembles at least some of the stuff that you see happen here in the Western world.
Yeah. It's part of it's one of those things, like you mentioned. Anime has matured. It's one of those things where if you look back at older stuff, it's like you can't just have the the woman can just sit there and beat on the man and not matter at all. It's one of those things that I love to bring up in the examples is Inuyasha. Like, people like to talk about, oh no, it's the relationship's perfectly fine. You see, could go a pile drive Inuyasha into the ground in a lot of that show. It's one of those, looking back on it, that's kind of abusive.
Yeah, but at
And
the
for
same time,
show-
it doesn't actually injure him, and Inuyasha is totally a bottom, so...
Yeah, it's okay. I'm not going to get behind too much on that one, but it's one of those. If you want to go into a romance and if you want to be serious or something, especially in like the harem genre or stuff like that, it's all right. Do we want to be hot trash, or do we want to have a good story? And if you want to have a good story, you have to start looking at like, all right, how does this actually work? And that's one of the things we're actually seeing with this, which is a very
Exactly.
interesting thing to do. And one of the things, after I like went back and like tried it again to see some of the lists we were going through, oh, this is really well done. This is a lot better than I was going to give it any kind of credit for. The fact that you see the people interact with each other, the fact that you see the main character be completely open with this. Heck, from the bits I was watching, I love how the tsundere is just kind of like, I don't like this, but only in concept. I don't really actually have a personal problem with it. I just don't feel like this should be a thing we do. But you're being open, you're being honest, you're asking. I like the other people. We get along, we have fun.
On that note, I think it's also interesting that they even made that be like an internal struggle that the main character went through in one of the episodes, and also used it as one of the elements where they undermined expectations on how that would play out, which again kind of demonstrates their mastery here. And took it even a step further in that we see, and I don't know if this, I haven't read ahead in the manga or anything like that, but we see a couple of occasions where the two initial female leads actually express attraction for each other as well. And that is very, very different for these kinds of shows. That is not something that you would usually see beyond it being like the kind of tongue-in-cheek, like teasing humor that they do with like, oh, the girl grabbed the other girl's boobs in the hot tub or whatever.
They went, ara.
Yeah.
No, this is something I do want to say, because this will come in a little bit. You have to remember, if you're in Western audiences, especially in America, Canada, all that, we have gotten a lot more comfortable with showing gays, talking about that. In Japan, that is still a cultural stigma. That is not something that's openly and widely accepted over there yet.
Right. And that also brings me to my next point that is part of what makes this so interesting as well. On the meta level, for anime as a whole and Western culture as a whole, we've seen a lot of things where anime would engage in these subjects almost purely through the lens of humor, partly because that was all they could get away with at the time, right? And nonetheless, that influenced its audience, both in Japan and in the West. And I think over time, even though that's not a great or perfect representation, and we could have all the conversations in the world about how, just using something as humor like that maybe is damaging or whatever, I think there's a stage of cultural acceptance where when something is that level of not accepted, that it's beneficial for there to be any representation, even if it's, at the stake of being the butt of the joke. And I think we've seen anime both in terms of these, plural relationships as well as same-sex or even like transgender or cross-dressing. All of these kinds of things, because they were so normative, even if only as humor in anime, had a big influence on the audience and helped make that more accepted and mainstream. And now we're starting to see anime gradually catch up to the next phase of that, which is social acceptance, and portraying these things in a more nuanced and meaningful way. And that's, again, part of why this anime made this list for me, because I think that it's doing a great job of helping pull the conversation and narrative in that more mature direction.
Yeah, which I will say, like I said, I was saying before, this is not in any of the kind of genres I enjoy. It's actively in most of the ones I dislike. But it is one I will say, if you like these in any way, shape, or those genre, the romance, the harem, the actual that, this is a great show on every level. They do not skimp. They do not, so far at least. I don't like I didn't do it on the manga either.
Yeah.
They have an unprecedented level of showing off what that kind of relationship would be on. It's just 100 Girlfriend is going to be interesting. I'm really curious to see what this show does juggling on later, because
yeah, we may see it fall victim to second season syndrome, where like another studio picks it up and it really kind of falls off in production quality. That's probably the biggest threat I see to this show in the future.
Yep. Okay, do you have anything more to say on that one?
No, I think that is probably plenty for that one. But yes, absolutely check it out. If any of those genres, rom-com, anything like that is your thing, this is definitely one of the best shows of the season. Oh,
all right.
Although, slight warning, there is at least one character, even though it's, used completely as humor, that is extremely, in the technical sense, pedophilic. So trigger warning for potential viewers there.
Yeah. All right, but back to talking about gays. We have my number 5 for the season, which this might be a little bit of a cheating because I believe this technically did come out on the fall season of last year, but from delays and it's part 2, it was mostly shown in this year, and we did talk about it, so I'm going to add this. But we have Mobile Suit Gundam: The Witch from Mercury.
This one did not make my cut before I start the video here, purely because my rules for what could be included meant that no shows from previously established properties were allowed. So things like Gundam, that even though it might be a unique story with unique characters, is still part of this like consistent world, were not considered to be allowed by my rules.
Well, that's one of the weird things about Gundam, because it's not a consistent world; it's a consistent branding.
Right? Yeah, that's fair. But it's still an established property, so to speak.
So Boruto could never make your list?
Correct.
No, not even that. Gundam in itself is such a weird franchise, because this is if you haven't heard of the name before, Gundam is a massive multimedia franchise with everything under the sun you can think about. Witcher Mercury happens to be the latest entry on that, but is also a standalone in October, so technically last year.
I will replay the trailer, partly because it was very short and partly because I didn't have it up on my screen.
Way to go, Yuki. Can't blame me for that one.
Nope, that was all me.
But this, once again, what my bias is going to come in here. Mech is the top of my favorite genres. And Witch from Mercury does so many things beautifully. We not only have the first female lead, we have the first gay romance in a Gundam, but it also does not shy away from its normal world building things. This is a, hey, war is still bad, but has leaned away from maybe not so much countries doing it, but more of corporations and what their play is on that, and how they affect lives, and the good, the bad, the horrible on that one. And it even goes into what upbringing and parenting could be in a modern day society, and with these disconnects on the children. Not so much abuse, but just what, love for a kid that is in all the wrong places, that's brought up in the wrong ways, that's done for the wrong reasons, and what that does to those children.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on this a little bit already, but I will mention not just that this had that content, but that this series actually got a lot of very positive buzz on the internet, specifically for its handling of LGBTQ topics. And had this been a different sort of list, like if I were looking at this as not just new anime, but like overall anime of 2023, then this probably would have been of note for me on that list at some level, if only because of the amount of influence that it had on that topic and on that conversation. But that's not to say that it slacked in other areas either. This was definitely an interesting standalone series in and of itself.
Oh, on just the animation style, there are so many clips of this for people going, we can't believe that they had the budget to do these things. Like, the animation quality of Sunrise this time around is truly awe-inspiring. Even the scenes that are designed to look bad look amazing on so many technical levels. And on top of even bringing in the animation in the story, is managed to set up a great sci-fi world in what new technologies for a space-age people would be with our current lens on science. This Witch of Mercury did so much right. Not only from that aspect, but also helping revitalize the mech genre, which, as a mech fan, we've had slim pickings for the last decade. There have only been a handful of shows, not even good. We've had a handful of shows. I would say 1 to 2 a year. With hundreds of new series, we might get 1 or 2 new ones a year at this point.
And many of those are Gundam.
At least half of them will be Gundam, probably.
Yeah. and it's very sad, because in the past it was a very popular genre.
But unfortunately, it did oversaturate itself. It did run itself into the ground a bit. I will definitely say that. As well as Mecha Stories being a... Mecha Stories are a long format storytelling because of what they generally like to cover. This is a story about man and machine and what that means to be a person, to live in this world, to have to fight in this world, which is becoming more and more politically relevant nowadays. Not really happy about that one. I don't think any people is, though.
Well, and there's a thing too where it's noted, like, the way that Japan views the gun versus the sword, and the way that in mech anime, historically, typically, the mech is more of an extension of the pilot, the way that a sword would be, rather than a gun that is something that you're able to kill with little skill or mastery involved. So that brings it to a more personal level. And I lost where I was going with that.
Probably what it means for the whole the genre and how they do their storytelling in that.
Yeah.
Which has been very good and very interesting on that end. One last thing I did want to say about the whole LGBTQ representation on this show is this is a minor show. This is a new IP. This isn't something, all right, we have to fill this quota, which we are getting a lot of those shows right now. This is Japan's longest running, biggest name anime franchise saying, nope, this is front and center. This isn't a gimmick. We're going to see them kiss in the background. We're going to see these two people build a romance.
And literally be engaged.
That was a little gimmicky. I will give it that, though. I do have to take that away from it.
I mean, okay, it was gimmicky in the sense that it was kind of like a plot device, but it also has a lot of...
You do feel it.
Yeah, and the fact that the way that the characters handled that was of note. The fact that when it came to that being a possibility, the response being, yeah, what would be wrong with that? As opposed to like, oh no, I have to marry a girl or something like that.
Yep. Oh, I actually forgot about that a little bit. Yeah. Poking fun of, yeah, we're progressive here. Why do you find this weird? But I think that's about as much as I can bring up with that without going into Gundam history, technicals, and storytelling elements in this one, which I very much do not want to spoil at all because of the many twists and turns you have at this.
Yeah. I will note that you mentioned it's usually more of a long format. I think a lot of that comes from the fact that historically a lot of mech anime have fallen into the space opera genre, but we're starting to see more experimentation with the subgenres of mech anime.
Yep. Oh, and I like to chill. Well, thank you for the follow.
Hey, new followers.
Yay.
I forgot what I was saying.
Well, you're saying how the subgenres of mecha. That is a big point. Mecha used to be a 50-plus episodes franchises. Even the sumo style mecha, or it was just the Power Rangers style fighting the villain monster of the week, would go 50-plus. And with the current...
Often 200-plus.
Well, yeah, that's the earlier one. No, there's even a couple of those and big ones. Yeah. But mecha having to scale itself down to 12 episodes, or if given a lot of credit, 24, they've had to compress a lot of long style storytelling down, which has been good for cutting out the flack, the filler, all that. But at the same time, they really have had to adjust. You've had to really push, go. All right. I like to chill. Russell does not dream of Bunny Senpai. Yeah, I have seen a bit of that. That's also a pretty good one. But it's been a hard drive. Although we are seeing stuff get around that. Mech is starting to finally come back. It has found its footing, which we will see later on this list. But all right, that's about all I have there. Yuki, you ready to run the next one?
Yep. All right. Next up is I believe number 5. Yeah. No.
4.
We're up to 4.
We're halfway through now.
Yeah. The Insomniacs After School.
夜になると目が冴える。
全然眠くならなくて。
時間だけが過ぎていく。
ここに
So,
発足します。その名は
part of what got me about this series is the relatability of the characters.
面白くしよう。
Even if insomnia specifically isn't something that you've experienced, if you've ever had to deal with any kind of hardships like mental illness or being on any kind of spectrum or something like that, I think you'll find the characters and the way this series plays out very relatable and very endearing.
どんな関係だろう。
And
私
it definitely earned a place on my list because the emotional impact it had was very real and very strong. I was definitely moved to tears multiple times by this series. And to me, anything that has that level of emotional impact deserves some serious extra points. And you know, that to me is a credit as a work of art. It was also absolutely stunning visually in a lot of cases. It's not a show that was lacking in budget or anything like that, which is kind of rare for a like romance, a heavy romance series like this. And so if you're the kind of person that can deal with a romance story and can get past the fact that the characters are high schoolers, then I definitely recommend giving this a watch. But I think this is also noteworthy as being one of the cases where the characters being high schoolers is not just like a setting or you know, a way to appeal to that younger audience, but rather kind of pivotal to their emotional growth experience. These are characters who are flawed and who you know, have endured trauma and are finding solace in each other and learning how to do that for the first time. And I feel like that is especially powerful, and it makes sense for them to be in this kind of setting, because that fits for characters who are just starting to kind of explore relationships for the first time.
Not only explore relationships, but like you said, it's with people dealing with being on that spectrum, dealing with that. That is one of the things I will definitely say I could relate to most on that one is, hey, I'm a little off. I spent my high school years and my early, you know, college era years trying to figure out either to, you know, work through this or work it into my life in a functional form, which is hard. It is a lot of work. It's something that never goes away that you do have to deal with constantly, and this does a good job of not only like how do you deal with this, but you deal with those through other connections and other people.
Absolutely. And it really is just so critical to be able to have that support network. And this being a story of two people coming together to find and form that support network for each other for the first time has a lot of kind of a certain kind of forlorn beauty to it that is represented in the art style of the show.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I said before on your previous selection, if you are a slice of life high school romance, you're not making my top 10.
Yeah.
These are not the genres I enjoy. But I have to say it again, this is a masterful crafted show. This is a show that just doesn't do a romance, doesn't do this, but looks at people, looks at what they do, what they are, why they are the way they are, how they live in the world from then on there. This is a getting a little choked up. It's this one will feel personal to you on many levels.
Yeah, I think it's telling that both of us are struggling not to get choked up just thinking about and talking about this show. That's the kind of power that this show has in terms of its emotional response and the sort of connection that it can create for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you want to go into any bit of the story on this one, or if you want to maintain more spoiler free on this bit.
I think I'll stay more spoiler free because I don't feel like I need to go over the plot synopsis to give away what is important about the show.
Yeah. All right, let me pull up the next trailer on my side, or get that so it can be brought up from you.
Yeah. Okay, so next up is your number 4.
This is going to be Death Mountain Death Play. Fittingly enough, we got the second half of the show in the Edgelord fall season of 2023. And so if a few people might recognize the name, right, recognize what this is from, who did this. This is from the writer of Dur, or Dur, if you want to get the name on that one. And this show has his writing style all over it. This is not you follow a single character. This is several worlds interacting that do not mesh well, that do not do this.
Yeah,
this
there's
is also
a lot of that intersecting plot line kind of feel that we get from Dur.
This is also a reverse isekai. Part of the reason I said that we didn't really have another one on this list other than Kamagura or Kamigawa, but this is part. There's only been a couple of good instances. There's only been a couple of instances of what happens if this, sorcerer, if this powerful anime character is just dropped into the real world. What does that mean on such a fundamental level? The CGI doesn't get better in this one. I'm not going to defend that. While a lot of the animation does look good, there are masterful things done to it.
I will say the CGI looks better in motion than it does in still frame.
Yeah.
Also, jumping back for just a second to make a quick note on Gundam, I will note that the CG use in Gundam was extremely good. If you're looking for a series that does 3D CGI right, it's an excellent example to go look at.
What is going on with this all of a sudden?
That said, while you're working that out, I'll talk a little bit about Dead Mount Death Play, because I definitely considered it a pretty solid show and a respectable pick. It definitely follows in the footsteps and kind of builds on the foundation in a lot of ways of like Overlord. In fact, it's probably one of those series where if Overlord didn't exist, we may not have seen this come around. But that's not to say that it's, replicating that show or anything like that. And I think it's
Oh, that's what happened. All right.
It definitely has a... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say it definitely has the feel of the feel of what happens if the Dark Lord comes to our world. What happens if this character, this type of darker person? I will say that the story does dip a little bit away from that. This was almost a show I would not recommend. It's all out. I would say it's a lot better to binge it than it is week to week. This is a on the edge of your seat. You're just, oh, come on, don't, I want to get to every time from every episode that they showed until the very last episode where everything all kind of collapses together. Once again, if you're familiar with Durarara, you're familiar with that type of intersecting plot lines of there is a main character, but you're seeing what he's going to get into and why all these things come together.
Yeah. Now that said, I don't feel like that element was quite as pronounced as it was in Dur, or Dur. Like, I definitely felt a stronger connection to the characters in Dur than I did in this one. So for me, Dur is definitely one of the anime that will tend to come up when I'm recommending like strong watches for viewers who are first getting into anime. But I don't think this would make that kind of cut. Partly because of that, and partly also because of the fact that it relies a little bit too much on people's meta knowledge of the anime Zeitgeist to really be a strong watch without having seen a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, I will definitely agree with you on that. This is if you are a veteran anime fan, you will like this. If you are just getting into it, this probably isn't for you.
Yeah, or at least you won't get nearly as much out of the experience, and will tend to not feel it's as strong of a pick as a result, I think. So, for me, this one sat a little bit lower. It wasn't quite able to make the pick. Even though these kinds of like magical genres and isekai are definitely in large part my bread and butter, maybe partly because of that, I have a tendency to be very picky about what does and doesn't sit near the top for those series.
I can definitely understand that. For me, like I said, I'm also a bit of an edgelord. This season, I was eating good this past season.
Yeah.
And this managed to get that darker tone, man, to get that. Did you finish this one?
I believe I did finish this one, yes.
Right.
And I would definitely put this at least in the upper, mid-range tier, probably around like 8, something like that. I don't think I went back and saw the second season, no. So that could have influenced
That's probably
things for
why
me a bit as well.
The second season's what pushed it out of my top 10 for me, honestly. That really does pick up.
So that's probably an important distinction for everyone to know too. And again, part of why I'm hesitant to put things on my list if I haven't like seen them all the way through is the ending to something can really just make such a big difference in how strong of a series it really is. A flat ending can ruin an otherwise great series, and an amazing ending can sometimes pull a series up a couple of notches.
Yeah, I will say where this season 1 was first half of the season, the first 12 is a bit of a slow burn. It's establishing the world. It's building the characters. It's like if you want to go back and watch the first season of Dur, the first 12 episodes. Has that very heavily feel on that side of it. Yeah. Season 2 builds that up, takes these characters who, hey, that's some crazy BS that's in the background here. Why aren't these people absolutely just shitting themselves about this guy right now?
I still feel like Dur was a little bit more frenetic in the way that it paced out the introductions and everything. And did maybe a little bit better of a job in terms of doing kind of in medias res sort of stuff and introducing the characters in a very interesting way early on. But some of that might also be the fact that I completed the series, so I'm not sure how much bias I'm inducing there.
Yeah. If you go back and remember it, the first 6 episodes are purely character introductions. You spend the first 6 just following somebody else around the city.
That's true, but that guide that we see of walking around the city had a lot more like unexpected moments of interest in it, I think, than we see in Dead Mount Deathplay.
I would definitely agree with that.
characters suddenly getting hit by a vending machine flying out of nowhere and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that made it a little more memorable. But at the same time, had they just kept using that, it might have felt like more of a cheap trick that the writer was employing rather than, you know, kind of making characters stand on their own.
Yep. The other thing I will say is Death Mountain Death Play where it deviates is this is I don't quite want to say mystery, but it's the best genre I can think of.
Maybe thriller.
No, because it is a mystery because it's the main character coming in here, and while he's not dealing with much, especially in season 2, it's I recognize what that is. How the ever living hell is that here?
Maybe detective.
Yeah, there are detectives in it, which who are the absolute normal guys in the entire series, and they're just like, what in the ever living god of hell is happening here? How is this happening? And even then, you see it start to get some of the hit mysteries that the main character doesn't resolve start to become unraveled by them towards the end. Although one other thing I did want to, it's a little bit of a spoiler for our character's a bit of his story, but it was such an interesting thing. You can kind of see it in the thumbnail we have for the chart there, but one of the main characters is constantly wearing a VR headset throughout the show. He's a bit of the data and all this, so it's like, oh, he's the tech guy, so he just kind of has the Geordie visor a bit going on.
Yeah.
You find out later on he wears that not because of a physical thing or because he wants to be plugged in more, but it's actually a bit of a mental trauma. He has trouble, going out exploring the regular world by himself. But if he wears a VR headset, puts a bit of a computerized overlay on stuff, it helps him cope and adjust to it.
Ah, the old trick yourself into feeling more like you're in a video game trick.
Kind of, honestly. And while it isn't a major thing for a good chunk of the series, when they go into this character and bring up why he has this, why he does what he does and all this stuff, it does come down to like, oh, that's honestly a kind of interesting thing, and I can kind of see how that might be a thing later on. Like in our own world, not like in the show. Like how, that might be something people eventually end up coping if we ever get VR headsets that aren't bricks tied. I would say the new ones are fairly good. They're still a brick tied to your face.
Yeah, well, and they're also not really set up typically for like AR. We do have like the AR glasses, but their functionality is very different from the VR headsets. So I think once we start to see kind of that hybrid implementation, maybe we'll see that kind of thing. Which will also probably have a lot to do with advances in battery technology.
Oh, yeah. But once again, this is a character-driven story, and a lot of the stuff they bring up in this, I would say that's definitely a theme for both of us. All of our favorite shows from a lot of this season are very character-humanized stories.
Well, I think that's probably touching on the fact that if you have weak character development, then that's kind of a weakness in the show, and it's hard to make the top 10 if you're dealing with that level of deficit, right? On the other hand, very superb character development really helps tie the audience to the character, and can if you really go above and beyond, can really again kind of give something a lot of extra points, and really help bump it up into the upper tiers.
Yep, and that's why I say season 2 was really a step up on that one.
And to be clear, character development doesn't just mean spending more time on a specific character. And it doesn't just mean, like, having a whole episode dedicated to their backstory info dump, right? Character development also means, or more accurately means, showing you who this character is, which doesn't have to be any kind of monologue or like, huge backstory.
Specifically showing us, not telling us to.
Exactly. And that goes back to one of the real strengths of 100 Girlfriends, right? They're able to introduce us to these characters and develop them very rapidly by showing us who they are, not giving us info dumps about them. And the other piece of character development that's so important is having some kind of character arc where a character can experience some kind of change or growth. And so frequently that doesn't happen, especially in a lot of the genres that we both enjoy as overlap, where we've got a lot of these, like, isekai edgelord type series where the character is just this super flat personality that has, you know, they're just like a self-insert and have no real emotional motivation or anything, and no real growth over the course of the series.
Good way to spot them: if they have basic anime features, a black hair, a basic black coat design, it's a basic bitch.
Or very likely, anyway. It's either a basic bitch or someone who is intentionally being posed as a basic bitch for the purposes of undermining that, but we see that much less frequently.
Ew. But yeah, but it's something that comes out and is very that it's I don't want to spoil, especially since you haven't seen too much of it, because there is a lot to unpack. And once again, this Death Mountain Deathlight is a series. Honestly, you see the main character really grow in this franchise, because it comes into it, and not only does he have no place in this world, but he has, absolutely no connections. He's never had a lot of connections, and he does slowly build those up to by the end of it. It's a lot of people supporting him are like, yeah, no, I'm going to back this kid, and he is very much of, okay, I never wanted to use these spells because I didn't care enough about myself to do this, but I'm not letting you hurt these people.
I would say it goes a little deeper than that, even because, just from what I've seen in season 1, they do at least touch on the fact that he did have some connections in the past, and those connections were ripped away from him. And it happened in a way that made him feel guilt, as though it was his fault that horrible things befell those connections. And that introduced a layer of trauma that character was dealing with, that made it difficult for him to form new connections.
And which they you get the full story on that in the back half of the season 2, and it's worse than it looked in part 1.
All right.
Yep. All right. I think if this didn't. Yep. All right. It's still good.
Okay. So moving along. Speaking of series that deal with undead.
This is very much a clip, but it's a fun clip. I'll give it that. But no, this is a very interesting story because unfortunately this one did not make my list. While there's nothing necessarily bad or I dislike about it, it very much is in the. I'm gonna just close that down. Unless you're gonna try to look for the actual trailer.
If you want to keep it open, I'm gonna pull up the official trailer too. There we go.
It's part of the, if you're stuck in that dead end life, if you're not that, if you are a living zombie, if you're in this kind of life, if you're in this kind of thing, what it means to actually be there, what it means to break out, what it means to actually start living. isn't something I'm as sad as I can say it, or no, honestly, as happy as I can say it, this isn't something I've ever been a part. It's ever hit me personally.
あれだ
So unfortunately, I don't connect with this one as directly as quite a lot of people I can imagine do, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something a lot more people connect with these days, increasingly so. But personally, as someone who's worked in the game industry, who, you know, has worked insane hours for weeks and weeks on end for, you know, virtually no money, and who has had work truly intrude upon their life in a way that I found myself wondering and asking myself, am I living? And literally feeling like a zombie, you know, being so tired from lack of sleep and overwork that I literally was afraid that it might end up killing me, if only because I you know, couldn't stay awake on the road driving to and from work. It definitely struck a strong chord for me. And that said, I don't think you need to necessarily quite relate to it on that level. I mean, that definitely will help you connect with the first couple of episodes and with some of the core theme of, like, kind of living life. But I think there's a lot more going for this series than just that. And it does an excellent job, again, of, like, evoking emotion and having these characters go through an arc where they're developed over the course of the season, and, you know, find changes in themselves as they face challenges that force them to confront themselves and question their own beliefs. And I think that's also a core that we see in a lot of the very best shonen works, which this kind of does sort of vaguely fall into that genre, but it's a more adult, grown-up version of shonen, I think, where we're looking at...
and not just the blood and tits kind of grown up.
Correct, although there is that.
Although I will say one of the interesting concepts for the design is the fact that they make all the zombie blood colorful. It's like, it's not red, mostly, sometimes.
There are a few
rainbow.
times where it is, yeah. But they do that very intentionally, and you're right, that touches on one of the artistic elements of the show. And I don't have the necessary film background chops to be able to properly dissect that. I'm sure there are other YouTubers out there who can really go into that way better than I can. So I'll leave it to you folks to look them up and you know, see what they have to say about that. But it definitely is an element that you know, helps show you that they're using these very intentionally, as, again, an analog for things besides just being a zombie. And it's I think a case again where just the number of times that this show evoked an emotional response from me definitely bumped it up a number of spaces on the list.
Yep. Like I said, it was the fact that I couldn't personally connect with this one that kept it off my top 10. Other than that, this is a masterfully...
Oh yeah,
I would say this is a zombie anime. A little piece of me does not want to compare this to High School of the Dead.
There definitely are some parallels between this and High School of the Dead. But where High School of the Dead went more of the hot trash route, this tried to distill those sort of mastery elements. And
well, it's the fun zombie apocalypse. The comparison I wanted to make on there. This is not Dawn of the Dead. This is Zombieland.
Well, but crucially, it's fun zombie apocalypse because that's what the characters choose to make of it. Because they have felt the crushing despair
Weight of the world.
and weight of the world that we live in today, and finding themselves free of that, have decided to try to enjoy whatever they have left of life to the absolute fullest. And I think that definitely gives it, a lot of interest and merit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to give a note on the quality on this one, this was simulcast on Netflix in the US, which does not goddamn happen for some stupid reason, as well as getting a live action adaptation and still simulcasting on Crunchyroll.
Yeah, I think probably, I'm speculating a little bit here, but probably what happened there is it's a Crunchyroll series, and it was licensed out to the other services, and that's why Netflix didn't keep it in Netflix jail, because it wasn't like a Netflix sponsored series. It was picked up by Netflix for content.
Which you have to simulcast anime if you want people to get to watch it, or you have to hold it in jail. Because if you air it week to week, people will watch that before they'll watch it come out in the US, even if they like the dub better maternally. They've turned out a couple of shows. But this is a great one to watch. All right, and I think we're going to go back to a one we had before for a second here on my side.
Yes, we're looping back to Magical Destroyers again, which I guess I'll replay. Whoa! Turn the volume down on that a little bit.
I think this is a different trailer, too.
I may actually have grabbed a different trailer for this one, but I can't remember.
Cool. But some of the stuff we did go over in that one, I really did want to bring up in this. This is such a, I think I said it before, a punk 90s grunge fest Maho Shoujo. Each one of the characters is so far removed from the stereotype while still embodying it somehow. And it is such a great throwback to otaku culture, fandoms of every genre, the different age groups, and how that's affected them throughout that, as well as the perspective from both the fans, the corporations, and people looking in at the genre.
Yeah, and we see so much influence from so many prominent series in here, as well as that kind of like Gainax legacy feel to it.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that before. This is on almost every goddamn level that Gainax style anime. To where if you're not familiar with what a Gainax ending is like, go experience it once. You'll regret it in all of the best ways.
Gainax, by the way, famously is one of the companies that got press for fans being so upset about the way that the series ended that they actually stormed the studio. They formed like a more or less literal torch-bearing mob and went to demand that the ending be changed.
I have a very good idea of which anime you're talking about, but I can't say with 100% certainty on that one.
Yeah, there's two anime that in history that I know of that have had that kind of happen. And one of them was a Gainax series.
You could have told me both of them were Gainax series and I would have believed you. But I as someone who's been at this point, I can probably call myself I can like almost completely call myself an old taku. I have been a fan of this kind of animation and series for a long time. I have watched a lot of the classics at this point. I have gone through it, and I part of the reason we have even started this very podcast and stuff is I want to bring people into shows bring them into like what they can be, both on the surface level as somebody just coming into it, and veterans who feel like they've burned out, feel like there's just too much garbage floating around. The anime doesn't have the sting, the burn, the feelings that it once did.
On that note,
And
I absolutely would not recommend this series for first-time anime viewers.
this is a veteran series. This is a very deep, dark veteran franchise. This is something who speaks to the older anime fans, or an anime fan who is deep into it at this point, who has gone through his shonen era, has gone through his shoujo era, has gone through their harem era, or whatever first couple of genres, really dragged you into anime, and is now curious. All right.
And this isn't
what's
just
below
like
the surface?
gatekeeping, by the way. This is like, you're not going to understand and appreciate this series without that context. So,
Or enjoy it even.
yeah.
Because this is weird. This is strange. This is even the discourse of it coming out week to week, people talking about it, like speculating. It reminded me of those old forum days of, oh, what do you think this is going to be? What do you think this story is going to be? This is a series made for I don't want.
It was strange and weird, though, in a way that very intentionally and specifically built on the past. So without that context, it can't be truly appreciated.
Or understood.
In many cases, yes. Not that you can fully understand it probably anyway, but...
Like I said, it's like once you get to that old, it's like, it's one of those things you don't understand it, but that's the point in understanding it, that you will never be there.
Yeah, part of the interest derives from the challenge of trying to understand as much of it as you can.
I do not bend the spoon because there is no spoon. Oh, come on. This series got that meta.
Oh, for sure.
As well as being... It's that colorful grunge. It's also... It is a dark, dirty series that's both colorful and beautiful so many times.
Also, since we talked a little bit about, like, LGBTQ and, relationship types and things like that with regards to some of these other series, I will say that this one has an interesting take on, a few other, topics that are kind of, both on the mature side and on the kind of like shushed or hushed up sort of spectrum of things that aren't talked about a lot, which is there's a lot of reference to like BDSM related themes in this, and also drug use.
I'm sorry, I just had to do something with that, but and we don't mean that softly either. Like, we mean that it's like, yeah, no, this character is just in that life.
Yeah, and so you see a discussion kind of happen around that's framed in a very unusual way within the series. And I'm not going to make a lot of judgment as to whether or not that's a good or positive way in this case. But I just did want to point out that it's unusual and kind of unique as far as a perspective goes.
This series will explore all of the underbellies of all of the fandoms and everything that kind of goes with that. If you're one of those people that go to a convention and, oh, I kind of like this, that was cool, but you see a furry walk by and it's like, why is this person here? This series is going to put that in your face and kind of, they're here because these people gravitate towards this, these people gravitate towards this, and it does kind of bring that with it.
All right.
Which,
was there anything else you wanted to say about this one? Because I know we touched on it quite a bit already.
We did touch on it a bit. At this point, like we've hit the top 3. This is where the hard cut on my side of my list had to really start. And these were the series I really want. These are probably going to be the franchises I talk the most about and have the most spoiler talk because I want to have so much to discuss from here on out.
Sure thing. All right. With that in mind, yes, we are definitely hitting the top of the list here. And so coming in at number 2 for me is this season's kind of new big genre hit, Freyren Beyond Journey's End. And for those not familiar, you'll need at least a basic synopsis of this. This story takes place after the defeat of the Demon King. It is a fantasy story, it is not an isekai, and the focus is on what happens with life after the big bad enemy is defeated, and what it means to be a character that lives an extraordinarily long life. What it means to out-survive all of your friends and companions that you've lived with. How that changes your perspective on the world, and how you learn and grow from those experiences over an incredibly long period of time. That said, the show is beautifully animated. The backgrounds are absolutely gorgeous in most cases. There's some great Sakuga moments in it. And the characters feel so real and vivid and well developed and explored. But what gets me the most for this show is the forlorn feeling that everything has. And it's so well implemented with subtle cues from the audio, with these beautiful landscapes that still feel kind of empty and desolate and melancholy. And how that becomes kind of a reflection of the main character's life up until this point and their experiences with these incredibly long periods of time where they just feel that nothing noteworthy has really occurred in their life, to the point that they barely retained the knowledge of the events. Where the 10 or 20 or 30 years that would be so incredibly long of a period for a human are looked at as just kind of a blink of the eye. And, you know, they'll propose, hey, let's just stay in this village for the next 30 years, as though it was, you know, hanging out for a weekend. And all of that kind of culminates into this exploration of what it means to have connections to others, what the importance of those are, the impact both expected and unexpected that others have in our lives. And again, you know, I've said this before with some of the other series, but this one has been extremely good at evoking emotional responses. And while they may not be quite as strong as a couple of the series below them that I've mentioned, the series isn't over yet. And I think it has a lot of potential to be even more powerful as it progresses through the second half of its run. And the characters have already thus far shown so much growth and potential, as well as this one hitting both my genres and also being a representation of the fantasy genre that has become very rare. both in terms of its quality and the fact that it is a standalone fantasy and not an isekai.
One little note I want to put in there: not just a standalone non isekai fantasy, but a true fantasy, not a we use video game stats as a shorthand. This
Correct,
is
yeah.
very much a fantasy lived in world. This
Yes.
is a dark age with, while there is magic, this is something only a few people have. You train up in, and it takes you a lot of time, research, practicality. Everything in this world feels like people built this, people work on this, you train on this.
Yeah.
This is a series that you will feel, oh, this took this long to do.
Yeah, the world building and magic systems in this are stellar. But they will also feel very homey and familiar to those of you who are longtime fantasy fans of things like Tolkien and D&D. If you have love for those kinds of pursuits and genres, then to me this is a must-watch even for a non-anime fan.
So almost definitely on that end. I will say, it's like, I know this is the series you asked me, you were surprised it didn't make my top 10 list.
Yeah.
I will say everything you made, this series missed it by a hair. There was just a couple on here that hit me in a little bit better way, hit me in a little bit better genres. Honestly, the thing that's kind of kept this away from me was its built-in, highly in-depth feeling of melancholy.
Oh yes.
Like you were saying before, this
it's
series
infused with it.
this series will very much, and I'm blank. Oh, the main character was doing this, or I think it happened in episode 1. It was a description of, you see the Freya, our main character, go into a shop, get a trinket. She leaves. You see her do some other stuff in other parts of the world. Come back to the same shop, and the shopkeeper is now an old man, where they were just starting out when the first time she was here. And that's where this series begins to have its feel. You see this character just, oh, I guess you're old now, huh? And it's not only with them dealing with that, but them realizing that when they actually are confronted with something that they truly cared about, truly appreciated, was a undistinguishable rock in their life, something that will define what they are going forward, and see that pass.
Yeah.
And you see it hit this character so hard. Like, oh.
I think that touches on part of the relatability of this series as well, which is at its core, the journey that we're following for the main character is one of trying to get back that which is irredeemably lost. Trying to find the scraps of something in your life that has already been missed as an opportunity, that has already passed you by, the nostalgia that comes from that, and the desire, that pure motivation to better understand those feelings that it evoked, and the sincere wish that you could have done things differently and had a different outcome from that experience. And all of that ties back into that melancholy aspect that you were mentioning. But at the same time, because it is so melancholy, it is a very bittersweet show. And so I definitely understand how it can be a little bit of a harder watch, especially if you're not in the right mental, emotional space for that. But if you're in the right place to watch it, it will hit you right in the feels.
Yeah, I will say that right there is probably the biggest reason that it didn't make my list. It's that melancholy, depressing. It's all that. I am someone who has lived my life marching forward as hard as I can because I have hit a point where I'm like, I could relax here. I could be happy. I could have some, just everything okay. So when I see these people, these shows that hit this melancholy attitude, it's something I just have almost no frame of reference to. There is no, I liked my life here. This was enjoyable.
Well, I think also there's an aspect in this show that might be a little more relatable for you on this particular level, which is the sense of the character not having realized what they lost and missed until it was already too late. And sometimes when we live our life in the way that you were just describing, just like really marching forward, yes, it's easy to miss opportunities and stuff when you do nothing at all, but sometimes we also get so wrapped up in trying to charge forward that we don't see and appreciate the little side paths that we could take, the little things that can add flavor and value to life. And I think the show does a good job of embodying some of that as well, both in terms of the characters' explicit experience, as well as the vibe that the show gives, so to speak, where and this brings me to one of the things that some people might kind of ding the show for, which is that it's a little bit at times kind of slow and really focuses on these like open landscapes and stuff.
It can be a bit meandering, but in a good way.
Right, but that's part of the journey, and it's done very intentionally. And I think a lot of that ties back to the Japanese concept of ma, the space in between, that is used and referenced heavily in like Studio Ghibli works, where you'll see a lot of the scenes where the show will just kind of pause to show you this landscape of like grass blowing in the breeze and things like that, which might not be critical to the plot or anything, but it still adds a lot of value, sometimes purely by way of creating that pause and that gap to allow you to experience what you've just experienced more fully, to kind of digest what just happened before you lead into the next thing, and also put you in the proper emotional state to be receptive to what's going to happen next.
Yep. Also, chat, Steam Nova, while this is a top 10 list, I would say everything on here is S tier for one reason or another. So this isn't anything is lower quality than that. This is the best of the best, and these do have to be measured against the top end things. But no, with what you're saying on Fear and stuff like that, I could definitely see where you're coming from. I could definitely agree. Unfortunately, even with the marching forward and missing the side paths, that's also a lesson I learned very early on in life. So a lot of stuff here, while I can relate to it, it's stuff I don't look back on as being, happy points or this. This is, I enjoy the genre. I love what it does, but it reminds me of too much of stuff of I've gotten past, I get over, I push beyond.
Sometimes there's just too much of an existing emotional toll. So like I said, yeah, if you're not in the right mental emotional space, if you can't take that baggage on that the show is offering you to use as a lens against yourself, if you're not prepared for this self-examination that could bring about for you, then this might be a show that you're just not prepared or ready for at that time in your life.
Yeah. Like I said, unfortunately for me, this is that's a look I've had to take at myself already. It's like, I've looked there. I'm good at that end.
Yeah, and that's valid too. Sometimes you're not feeling like a second look at those things is something that you want to do for one reason or another.
Yeah. But that's going to be very interesting. While I am not incredible. Like, this does not put me at the top of my top 10 list. This is a show I have been recommending to several people. That is just on the like, if it wasn't for some of these others, and honestly, going through and talking about a couple of these, I might have changed some of them. I might even move some of them around again after we do this list.
Mm-hmm.
I will say Frieren is a very, very well done show.
Yeah.
On every level.
And again, I think this is one of the ones that will see people, maybe not 20, 30 years down the road, but at least for the next 10 years or so, having a lot of influence within the zeitgeist and the anime meta and the conversations around anime. I think we're going to see a lot of shows being compared to this in various ways. And
yeah,
degrees.
this is a bar that has been set. I will definitely agree with you on that one. Okay, that's about all I can get on Frieren on that end. Do you have any more to add?
Nope. But again, if fantasy is at all your thing, if you have any love for the classic fantasy elements, this is definitely worth a watch for you. Whether you're coming from Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Tolkien, Dungeons and Dragons, it has a little bit of all of that, and it does an amazing job with it.
Yep. Or if you happen to be a rare Wheel of Time fan. It's one of my favorite book series, and it does not get brought up enough.
Totally fair. Alright, next up is your number 2, and a series that I know absolutely nothing about, so I'm going to let you lead the charge on this one.
Okay, so this is going to be the weirdest pitch for an anime on this list. And I know that very well by going into this, what we've already seen. This is a mech genre. A mech show. Well, first off, this is Bullbuster by Studio Nut. And if that pun doesn't get you giggling already, you might be in the wrong headspace. This is a mech show that isn't just about the robot fighting the monster, about going out and saving the day. This is a really short trailer, honestly.
Monster and budgets. I'll see if I can find a longer trailer while you're talking.
Yeah, everyone hates the Wheel of Show too soon, but the best way to show, and one of the reasons I am such a mech fan, I went into this a little bit in Gundam, but the mech genre in itself is in a very interesting place. People have been trying to reinvent it, to just not be the war story, not be that. And Bullbuster is what is mildly referred to as a genre that has been around for a minute, but has not been deeply explored too often, or only just as a background. The bureaucracy mech. This is a show where the characters will spend 10 minutes talking about repair costs, munitions variations, and the cost for those from degradable cartridges to standard cartridges, and what copper pickup means in the military. And not just goes in from that, but goes into what working in a corporate setting, working in a
Okay. Well, all of the English previews for this are very short, actually.
which I can kind of understand, because there's honestly, the CGI monsters are god awful looking on every single aspect. But that's not really why you're here. It's a show where every character in this thing is a person I know, have worked with, or have to currently deal with. And there is never a big change up. Like, one of the character I hate absolutely throughout the whole first 4 episodes of this show, who doesn't change, who we don't get a big backstory reveal on, who by the end of the show I am very much, oh, I see what you do here. This is why you do this. I can respect that. Is the accountant, is the person who brings up, hey, you can't do this. That costs too much goddamn money. We will go bankrupt if we do this. Oh, this would solve the problem. We can't afford that.
I'm getting kind of vague, like, Mech Warrior front mission vibes.
Which you would think, but it's also very much not. While the mech, it's a modern day mech series. It's set in current era Tokyo. This is the kind of mech we currently do build in Japan, which there are mechs. You can buy them. There's a thing. Don't.
Yeah, like the hydraulic exosuits.
No, I will show you after this. They are building and selling full-sized mecha in Japan.
Interesting.
Well, not full, about this sized. But these aren't suits. These are fully cockpitted, controlled. And this series goes into these characters. Like I said, the accountant, it's, why does he do this? Well, if, as a corporation, if you go into the red, your company goes under. It breaks apart. You failed as a business. Oh, we can do this because it looks cool. Doesn't make money. And it is that hard reality stepping in. You have characters who aren't good at communicating, who are probably on some kind of spectrum, who come off as standoffish, who, I follow the rules because the rules are here for these reasons. If we don't follow them, people get hurt. And while you can't have the old hero jump into the cockpit, I don't care about the startup or all this. We launch now. We have to save them. A lot of this stuff is there. And one of the reasons why this works so well is because it goes to show you what not just a mech, a corporation, what these things are. These are a group of people operating a single machine to fulfill a purpose. And you get to see the cogs, the bolts, everything that comes together to form the giant robot fighting the monster. And what it takes to bring that together, and what this mighty machine truly represents from everyone behind it. Which I could go a little bit long with. This is also the reason why I love battleships and other things like that. But you get to, like I said, is a very humanizing series. Our main character, the one who initially designs and helps operate the machine, that is a mecha fan, loves the fact that he wakes up in the morning, works on designs, upgrades, and then pilots a robot that fights monsters.
I think this kind of touches a little bit on the old classic otaku internal argument debate about how mechs inherently aren't practical, and anything that you could use a mech for, it would be more efficient to just build a tank or a forklift. It sounds like this is kind of touching on that a bit, and maybe even
that is a big part
taking
of it.
A lot of influence from that debate or discourse.
This is very much based on that. The mech they're showing off here is a construction machine designed for soft earth areas. It has a drive mode where it just turns into a semi tank. They have other mechs. Bull Driver, which is it literally is just on treads in a tank. It was designed for this. These machines weren't built to fight monsters. They were built for specific purposes. Like, as you can see on Bullbuster in our top list, its hands are from a logging machine, and it does kind of incorporate into that of what it takes to build, why these are purpose made like this, why you just can't have a Gundam come out of nowhere and start flying laser blasts everywhere. It really digs into the mechanics behind that. And if you can love that type of genre, if you can love seeing, like I said, it's a corporate, like not just a corporation, but like all these groups of people, what drives them, what brings them together, why they work for this company, and what's the difference between a small, tight company that works well together, works this together, and large corporate entities that just, hey, this doesn't make as much money as this. Why are we doing this here? What's, the big profit, and the difference between what they do and what, a soulless corporation can do.
Yeah.
And how sometimes you get into these corporations and you just meet people you do not get along with. You don't quite understand, like,
don't see eye to eye.
Don't see eye to eye, don't really understand them right away. And it's not like, oh, you're this way because this happened. It's like, no, this is just who you kind of are, and having to understand that. Like a lot of the main characters, you don't initially like these characters because, oh, I understand why you do this. Because you hear their backstory of what made them this way. You get to know them as people, get to understand why they do what they do in their job, and I don't even say they're just some characters. Yeah, these two people don't get along. You will never get along with this person, but you come to an understanding and respect of each other. Oh, so it's chat. So it's the V11 Hall of a Mech Show. Not really sure on that one, but I know at this point I might be rambling a little bit, but it's like I said, it's seeing all these people, places, and all this stuff come together to form what is this robot and what it would take to drive it and to get it into the operations it needs to are really what set this apart for me. I'm just a sucker for those stories of everyone comes together to solve the big thing, and Mecha is a great series for showing that off, because you see the literal distilled force that is everyone coming together to beat this thing.
I wish I could contribute more to this one, but having not even seen a single episode or even a trailer up until now.
Like I said, it's a very weird watch. The best general comparison I can make without digging too far into the mech weeds is Shin Godzilla.
Interesting.
If you've seen that one, if you saw like the corporate bureaucracy at work, what it took from a standpoint of people who were trying to get gears turning but were just spinning their wheels, compared to people who didn't have the authority to get things moving but were laying the groundwork of what needed to be done, it very much does have that feel.
All right. Anything else you want to add on this one?
No, I think I've rambled on about as far as I can without going too far into the mecha weeds on this one again. Because
is there anyone specific you would or wouldn't recommend this one for?
If you are a war otaku, if you like seeing how things are made, built, or operated, if you like understanding that, I would very much get into this one. This isn't even an anime I would say is for anime fans. This is for people who liked watching how-to videos or mechanic videos. Even if it doesn't very much go into that, how the story's told and how the people work together feels very much in that genre.
All right. Well, I guess in that case, we're kind of wrapping up there and moving on to number 1 on my list.
Yep, this is going to be the top of what we both consider the best of the best for this entire year at this point. Although I don't believe yours is finished quite yet.
It may have some subsequent seasons coming out. That's entirely possible. But
もし芸能人の子供
in
に
the
生まれ
case
て
of
いたら
this particular
考
show,
えたことはない
I'm not
容姿や
sure
コネクション
that
は生まれた
it
時から持
matters
っておくべ
much
きだなって
for its ability to take the top spot.
嘘は
Um,
とびきりの愛なんだよ
for those who aren't familiar, Oshinoko debuted originally as a feature-length movie that was in Japanese theaters and actually completely topped the movie charts while it was in its run. It even beat out like one of the Marvel movies or something like that, or possibly Star Wars. I think it might have been Star Wars. And there's a lot of interesting and strong elements to this show, but that gamble alone, as this being the first series to have ever done that, earned it a place in the list for me, and really pushed it to the top because it did that successfully in a way that is now going to, I think, forever alter and change the anime meta to some degree, and what we can expect from anime going forward. And we've already...
We did actually see that on this list too. I think or were you about to bring that up?
I was about to bring that up, yeah. We already touched on it earlier that we're now starting to see these kind of feature-length anime showing up on Crunchyroll for, episode 1 of the series. And so clearly it's already kind of started a bit of a trend, right?
Nope, those are both, these are both High Dive shows. So this is something High Dive is experimenting with.
So far. Or at least they're the ones willing to pick them up, because keep in mind, High Dive is just licensing stuff for Western viewing. They're not, sponsoring things the way that, say, Netflix is.
Or even Crunchyroll.
Yeah, to some degree. Crunchyroll's kind of a mix, right? Like, some of the series they're actively sponsoring, and others they just have the license rights to.
Mostly licensing rights, but they do produce shows every so often.
Yeah, probably at least a portion of the shows that you see come out, they've financially backed to some degree. And so I think because of the fact that this has done something nothing else has ever done before, did so successfully, and is going to have some permanent impact and ripples on the industry, it kind of has to get the top place compared to everything else. Because when you're talking about things that have an impact that will be remembered in some way, it's hard to top that. Even the greatest of masterpieces are frequently lost to time. But if you manage to successfully do something new that forever changes the genre that you're within, then that is the kind of show that tends to stick around the longest, that tends to, in some way or another, stay in people's memory, or in the cultural memory for the greatest period. And the fact that it was also a relatively strong show in a lot of regards, with, really good animation, with a lot of really interesting plot points,
character
let's say.
decisions.
Yeah.
No.
It was also very good. That said, the show did have its weaknesses as well. And we definitely talked a lot more about it in the previous, anime season review that we did. But I definitely...
There are a few odd choices with the story in this one.
Yeah, there are. And a few things that may be questionable for some viewers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus the fact that there's a certain amount of blood and gore and things like that here and there that some viewers may find, too traumatic or something. But
And
those
they do
at least
manage to
were
talk on a
vital
couple
to the.
interesting.
Mhm.
I was gonna say they do manage to touch on a couple of big mental health issues, and as well as a couple other things that can be hard for people to watch through. They do put warnings at the start of those episodes too, though.
Yeah.
So be forewarned on those.
And again, this is another series that takes a look at trauma. And while maybe not as mature of a take as a couple of the other shows on the list, definitely does take a more nuanced and mature view of some of these issues than some of the things that we've seen in the past. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, well, one of the things I do want to bring up that is part of the main plot of the story is, while the opening movie throws you a bit off on what the series is about, this is a series about working in the entertainment industry, whether that's an actor, an idol, a YouTuber, or other aspects of doing this, and explores what's this like, how much effort you have to put in to be successful at these things, how much this can impact your life, especially for child actors, for teenagers, for all this stuff. What massive negative social media influences from just something that, the average me or you or normal everyday people wouldn't even think about in school. They'll be like, oh, this was just a slight bump and they got into a slight argument. This isn't going to be something that matters. To, oh dear God, 10,000 people are saying I'm a horrible slut now.
Or whatever thing happened.
Yeah. I'm throwing the most commonly used slur.
And that's an excellent point. Like the social media commentary aspect of it, as well as the fact that it does not shy away from dispelling the veil and showing you the darker sides of the entertainment industry and how that affects, your typical celebrity or minor celebrity, really adds a lot of value to this show as kind of an art piece and as something that is deserving of this kind of high ranking.
Yeah. And honestly, it's like I said before on a couple of these, if you are a high school slice of life romance, you're probably not going to make my top 10. But honestly, after going through a lot of this list, looking more on it, talking more on it, I almost want to put Oshinonoko sorry, for like back on here. I might have dropped this, honestly, if it wasn't such last minute.
I mean, I think also there's something to be said that if we were to do like a combined list and really collaborate on it, what we ended up with might look a lot different than what we have here for our individual lists. But I think there was a lot of value as well for us having this kind of conversation live and having these sort of debates and discourses for everyone to kind of see these perspectives that went into these selections and thought processes.
No, I can
At least I hope there is.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I wanted to do this with I'm happy I was able to get you because of how, I don't want to say counterpoint, but from the other side of the genre. This is I am, if this list hasn't pointed out at this point, I am a dark, heavy mecha. I don't like my romances. I don't like my slice of lives. I want to see the nuts and bolts. I want to see the grit. I want to see the edge lord and a lot of what I do. And Oshinoko, it's like, does not have the majority of that. It does get dark. It does touch on some of those very deep and personal attributes. but for the most part, it is not something I would enjoy if I hadn't been pushed 3 or 4 different times, like, hey, this really is this good, this really is that good, I probably wouldn't have sat down and just got through the opening movie, which I know can be a bit to ask, but got to the meat of the series, gotten into later aspects of it. And this was a show once I started watching it, it's like, nope, next episode, nope, next episode, nope, next episode. I just started binging it naturally, not just sitting down like, I'm gonna watch some shows. I actually had other things to do. I had to catch up on some other shows to watch, and it was just, no, I kind of want to watch more Ocean no Ko.
It does a good job of being compelling and have strong cliffhangers as well.
Yep. I wouldn't even say strong cliffhanger. It's just, I'm curious. Like, it wasn't I need to see what happens on the next episode. It's more of, I'm kind of curious as to what they're going to get into next. This wasn't a direct cliffhanger.
With this?
Yeah. Or I want to see these people go on or do more things.
Mm-hmm. And to touch on something you were just saying, I know it's not directly related to the conversation here, but I think if I had to say there was still like a gap that needed any kind of filling in terms of what both of us watch and are into, I think it's probably in the like sort of fluffy fua kind of really happy feel good anime, not the healing anime, but like almost the more kids oriented and like really kind of sincere magical girl series, things of that nature that things that have
we're both jaded adults at our points in our lives.
Yeah, things that have a very carefree kind of pink outlook on life, as well as maybe possibly sports genre.
No. It's like, I will admit, okay, good sports, because there is a big difference. When those are up there, I will put them on there. The closest we got over this year for good sports anime were the racing ones that came out this season.
Oh yeah,
and they were okay. They were good.
I found that the GT Ghost, that's not even the right initials, is it?
Is that the initial D sequel?
MF Ghost, yeah. It's a spiritual successor set in the same world as Initial D. And the first, 2 episodes were kind of slow, which, to be fair, could also have been said of Initial D. But it did definitely catch my interest for a bit after that, once they actually kind of got to the racing part of it. And also it was interesting to see that they did give us what some of the characters from Initial D were up to and kind of did after the end of the series. But yeah, as you alluded to, it just wasn't good enough or groundbreaking enough or anything to really quite make the list. Plus, it's technically an established property, which kind of cut it for me.
Do you like Initial D? Would you like more Initial D? Here's more Initial D. Have fun with your Initial D.
I think also the fact that it felt not quite as good as Initial D kind of degraded it for me.
Which I know the other show is it's the Formula 4 one, but I like the breakdown. I did like the breakdown into its genre. I did like the breakdown into that world, but I don't know, maybe because I've watched a lot of sports movies and shows over the years. If you don't do anything I haven't seen 20 times before, I don't care.
Yeah, freshness is not something you see a ton of in the sports genre. In fact, you could say a lot of it is really just like shonen with a sports skin instead of battles.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree on there. But steering it back into Ocean no Ko,
yeah,
anything else you want to bring up on that one, or anything story related?
I think that, you know, it's definitely noteworthy that it had some serious plot twists to it, and you know, a few things that will kind of really have strong shock value. So I really don't want to directly touch on those because they would be such spoilers, but I think that also added a certain amount of value to the series. Anytime that you can successfully shock your audience, you have done an excellent job. However, it shouldn't be the only trick that you have in your book, and the fact that it was able to deliver on some other stuff too, even if it did have a few weaknesses here and there in certain areas, really made it noteworthy.
Mm. Well, on top of that, it was also a good breakdown on in the entertainment industry, of not just, oh, these kind of things happen, but these are how this stuff is made. This is, hey, this was a really shitty adaptation of a show I liked. Well, it was on the upper production level, but there were also a crap ton of people trying to get this made, trying to get this through. Or when they touch on the I don't want to call him a VTuber, but the chicken head dude, chicken head bodybuilder.
Well, a YouTuber.
Which, okay, that's the other thing I wanted to bring up. They just say YouTube. They don't even go around that. They say YouTube. They reference that a lot. Some people on this show are YouTubers through and through, and they'll say, yeah, no, I do this on YouTube. One of the characters they bring in to help people is a children's... What was his description? He's a bodybuilder who helps children keep in shape.
Like a kid-friendly exercise guru, kind of, yeah.
Which they bring him on for a skit that is great, and they played
Also,
a Bon Jovi knockoff song.
Another ripped dude in a bird head.
Weird, yeah. It's kind of weird that happened twice. And they managed. This show had to have budget because they played a Bon Jovi song in this. They worked out to Bon Jovi.
Yeah, they didn't cut corners in this show. They definitely, you know, it had
the name brand hot dogs.
Right, and it had, you know, actual feature movie backing. So, you know, that tells you something about what they were able to kind of throw at this.
Yep. Which, without going too much into the characters or spoilers, which I don't want to, I'm sorry. Like, I remember I was sitting there just watching this, you know, intently. I hear Bon Jovi come on, and that struck such a unusual, like, collection of synapses in my brain to just utterly stun me. I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, even JoJo, which is a series notable for its creators, you know, real love of the Western music industry, rarely sees, like, licensed tracks in the show.
For better reference on that, look up Crunchyroll name changes for JoJo. It's quite hilarious. Well,
wait,
it's some of the
I didn't even know about that. That might be part of why a friend of mine was not understanding that there were, like, Western music references in JoJo.
Yep, if you watch the Crunchyroll version of JoJo, especially, they aren't allowed to use some of the names.
Wow, that is bizarre. Okay.
A bizarre adventure.
Yes. All right. Well, I think with that, it's time to move on to the last show on our list tonight, and your number one spot.
Yep, which a Netflix original. Which to bring up a little bit more, I know before when we were talking about My Home Hero, you're talking about how you don't see many stories like Monster and things like that.
Yeah.
This is written by this man who wrote Monster.
Yes. And you can also see a lot of the art influence in the style with the characters' design.
Yep. But for more effort, this is a retelling, I want to say, re-animation of who's the the original mangaki?
You're talking about the Astro Boy guy?
Yeah. But yeah, this is a retelling of the what's considered to be the penultimate arc of the original Astro Boy manga, fleshed out and given more details.
Osamu Tezuka.
Tezuka, yep. But done by a man who is known for doing deep, in-depth stories. This
also dark stories.
Very dark, which
and not surface level dark, but like psychologically dark to the effect of what the core of the human experience is.
And this is a show that hits on so many of the I will avoid a lot of the main spoilers for this show.
For those not looking at the screen, by the way, we're talking about Pluto. Sorry.
A T, I think? Yeah, Tezuka. Yep, thank you for that, Nova. But, yeah, this is a... Once again, it's a very interesting thing because the legacy and pedigree behind this show itself, which, once again, this is a Netflix original. It's 8 episodes, but every episode is an hour long with movie quality animation through and through. Which, Yuki, how far were you able to get in this?
I was able to get through episode 4, and for reference to everybody else, that's part of the reason this show didn't make my list. I was really trying to kind of catch up on this one at the last minute, and didn't get to it in time, really, to include it in my breakdown.
Yep. Which, this is also a show that, while they put it on the Netflix binge, and I think I did binge it myself, it is a show you do need to, like, sit down and digest per episode. Because this is a very heavy, deep breakdown on the human psychology and robot psychology and what that would mean and where that line does blur.
Yeah.
On so many different levels.
This is definitely aimed at the audience that is very much into that kind of classic look at what the impact will be of these kinds of technologies on the world, and on what that means when the line starts to blur between man and machine, and what the nature of being human is, and how we define that from being a machine in a world where the line between the two is increasingly blurred as humans get more and more robotic prosthetics, and machines become more and more human in their capabilities.
Yeah. One of the things I would say is that if Frieren was a grand telling of classic fantasy, Pluto is a massive update to classic sci-fi. You will see so much of that almost cyberpunk genre, almost of that done in such interesting and unique way. This is a detective mystery,
Yeah.
so there is a lot to unravel with it.
This, I think, is going to have a lot of appeal for people who, not only who were fans of like really classic stuff like Astro Boy, which this definitely has ties to, but also,
Well, he is in it.
right? Well, sort of, or maybe literally. I'm not totally sure if I haven't watched far enough, so that might be a spoiler.
Yep.
I don't know, but anyway,
He's in the cover and trailer for it. The picture we have posted there, that is Astro right in the front.
yeah. So, the what I was going to say though is, this is very much a show that will have appeal for people who are into things like Ghost in the Shell, Standalone Complex, and also, I lost my other piece to my train of thought there. I'll let you take it for
Blade
a minute.
Runner.
Well, Blade Runner, yeah, but there was another anime series I was thinking of that this would have a lot of appeal for that audience. It'll come back to me.
But an interesting concept. It's like they don't just go, "Oh, human bad, robot good." It very much is. You're saying, especially in the early episodes, you're seeing some of the worst as humans could be with a anti-robot KKK group. Just
Yeah,
the iconography, everything built into it, front and back, to
we
where
even
you're
saw that in
also
the
seeing,
preview.
yeah, you're seeing that a robot with absolute destructive force going on rampages. You're seeing every side of the argument they can put into this show and still be a complete and utter narrative. You're seeing what is a machine, what is a man, what constitutes what pushes a person to these extremes, what holds a person to what they are. And it's, well, like you could say with Yuki, it's, you don't see Astro Boy in this. Like, this show is not called Tezuka. This show is not called that. It is called Pluto, and it is the mystery of what this machine is, of what its purpose is, what it's doing to the world, and what the world around it is reacting to it with. Because one thing I will say, especially when they do get further in the series, you see, I'm trying to not do too much spoilers while explaining the series. You see so many different aspects. You see, I'll go to the second episode a bit. One of the stories that I think they put 30 minutes, almost 40 minutes of its hour run into just exploring this robot butler working with this old man who makes music, and just their interactions of a machine trying to understand what music is, what it represents, how it's made. Not through I don't understand music, but I don't understand why this is made.
Yeah, and there were a lot of themes there of both transhumanism in the reverse sense of a robot becoming more human, as well as kind of overcoming those boundaries and ideologies, especially held by the older generation, which we see reflected a few times throughout the series as well, where like the younger characters tend to be much more accepting, whereas the older characters tend to be much more set in their ways and are much more likely to have like these kind of anti-robot sentiments. But we see this kind of personal story of someone gradually overcoming some of that prejudice, while at the same time, both characters learn and grow from each other.
Yeah. And then once again, it's not a show that shows like, a human, a robot trying to understand what human emotion is. They almost come at it through the aspect of a child, of how humans learn and how we adapt to emotions, different perspectives, different ideologies and stuff like that, and how each person comes into being on that level.
Yeah.
Not just
Also,
with the machines, but also with the humans themselves. And oh, yeah, that kind of is a thing.
I'm not sure it's what I was thinking of earlier, but those who are fans of classic sci-fi literature like Isaac Asimov will probably also find a lot of interest in this series.
Oh, Asimov's influences are. I was going to say they're influential about that, but honestly, Pluto right here, and especially the old Astro Boy things, are a big debate on Western and Eastern influences on AI.
Yeah,
Or I
or
would say-
perspectives, maybe.
No, there is. I dig myself into this genre a little bit more than I think you do, maybe.
Sure.
But it's once you get into a lot of, especially the older literature, a lot of, weirdly enough, what the Western side of AI and technology is generally, it's a bad idea, it's a bad concept. Mankind won't advance until it realizes AI is something we should not create. Where a lot of the Eastern influence is AI is just the next step on what we become, and we don't grow until we grow with it.
Sure. I mean, I think that would still fall under the category of a perspective, right?
Yeah, I can understand that.
Anyway, there's I think though that even so, that influence is still present, and it's felt that all of these kinds of classic debates and everything are being built upon by this genre, so or by this series. So I think for people that are fans of that genre and that have a lot of knowledge of that kind of fiction, because this is kind of advancing that conversation, I think it'll be of interest to them.
Yeah. And for a better aspect of that, which I can go into just for the history of Astro Boy, or if you happen to have read, I haven't read that. I'm a fan, and I even haven't read the old manga. But if you have seen any of the old Astro Boy cartoons, the American movie, at least it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. The initial story of Astro Boy is following the world's greatest robot engineer, Tezuka, I believe his name is, and just the most masterful creation of AI, who can just look at technology and understand it and improve upon it. Until one day, his own son is killed in an accident and just dies. And unwilling to accept that, he decides to go out and remake his son as a machine. He is skilled enough, has the memories, the technology, the resources to just rebuild his son as a robot from the ground up.
We have the technology.
Yeah. And then it's coming to realize, after he's made this, his penultimate machine, a machine he poured every last aspect of his mind, body, and soul into, through unwavering amounts of, determination, grief, and drive. Looking at it, this machine looking at him like his father, and him becoming utterly disgusted and dejected from it, looking at it and realizing every failure he had as this thing, and then that machine having to go out and live afterwards. Yeah, but if you've ever seen the old clips of Astro Boy in the circus, that's what he did with the most advanced machine in the world. He goes out and sells it to the circus because that's what he believes the quality of this machine is.
Yeah, and they actually reference that in Pluto as well, those events.
Yep. Part of the reason I did want to bring that up.
Yeah.
Which, like I said, it's a growing aspect that they do have to touch on with AI. It's like, once you make something of this level and it becomes sentient, is this a person? Is this a machine? What is this? And while Pluto doesn't necessarily like, all right, what does this, question, like, how do we go forward from this? It's no, these are like, this thing can feel, think, live, adapt, grow. It's a person. It has those rights. Now we're going to put that in law. Now you all have to deal with that. Which isn't a side you see too often. This is a do robots deserve rights? This is a robots have rights. Now we have to treat them as people. And all the political baggage that would come with that.
Still trying to remember the name of that other series.
Can you describe it at all?
No, I completely lost the train of thought and just derailed it. But I mean, it does follow along kind of a path that a lot of like 80s anime were definitely exploring, with things like Armitage, Battle Angel Alita, and none of those were the one I was thinking of, but
there's what's the one about it was a Netflix one about the war android or cyborg who becomes a messenger.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, Violet Evergarden. I would say a
lot of those themes are also played later in the back half of this series.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't see a lot of that in the front half, but I could see how maybe some of that influence could kind of seep into the back half of this.
I don't want to spoil too much, but I think you might have heard a little bit about it, of how they talk about the last great, Pan-Asian war.
Yeah, they definitely reference that, like the 34th war or whatever, a whole bunch of times.
Yeah, you start seeing it from other perspectives and other of the robots in this franchise. They were in that war. This is a fully sentient person who had to go through war and lives with it afterwards, and what they do to adapt to that, especially something who's trying to understand humanity to begin with, and one of their biggest, references is war and how horrible that is.
Big Fifth Element vibes there.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's, I was I was kind of thinking, when I said cyberpunk, I don't know if that quite fits. The more, but yeah, though, this is not so much in design, but tone has a lot of cyberpunk feel.
Mm-hmm. This wasn't the one I was thinking of either, but Metropolis was definitely something that was a big influence in the older kind of Zeitgeist that I'm sure has found some influence and probably is touched upon on some level here.
Well, the interesting thing about that one, that was a love project to Tetsuo's older works. So, yeah, Tetsuo's was considered to be his magnum opus compared to his not legacy, but not monument, thing made to celebrate his work. Don't know why I can't think of the word for that.
Like a love letter, or
love letter. Yeah, that'd be a good one. Yeah, the love letter, is close to his, the peak of his work.
Or like a spiritual successor.
It was a love letter. It was designed off a work he had done and a lot of the concepts he put in there. It's one of those, if you look at the breakdown for it, it's like, oh wow, this is just Tetsuo the reference, the anime.
What it was. There's 8-Man After definitely comes to mind. I can't remember the series I was thinking of.
But the one thing I will definitely say about this is a human story, and it gets dark. It gets dark on so many levels. To the point where, as we talked about before, there is a hate group, representative of a couple other things, who are heavily anti-robot. One character, I think it's in episode 1 or 2. They're talking about, hey, my brother was killed by so and so. It's like, all right, we can run this to build an anti-robot speech. Guy looks into his history. Dear God, I run an extremist radical hate group. Your brother makes me sick just looking at what he did against robots. And they do not shy away from what that is, or what the impacts of that are, and what that did to people and other people around it, and what the repercussions of that kind of thing are. And this show does not waste a character. It does not waste scenes. Everything in there, while not maybe hitting you on a deep personal level, has a mountain of feeling behind it. Makes you question so many different things, like those classic sci-fis did. It is so beautiful on so many different levels, and it's such a testament to classic anime, classic sci-fi, as well as a great update. That's part of the reason I had to put this as my number 1. It's just, this show does so much on such a monumental level of scale that when you look at certain people's work or go back and look at it, this is going to be one that comes up in those searches, comes up in the, hey, if you want to experience the best version of this all-time classic, this is it.
Yeah, and a couple other things that still can't find the show I was thinking of, but a few other ones that came to mind that this kind of touches on to some degree.
Pixel_Gen have joined.
Maharomatic, Chobits, and I'm not sure if you've seen this one, Agent, but Time of Eve, to me, was one of the really, really interesting. Wow, so many raiders! Hi, raiders, welcome! Hi, everybody! Nice to meet you all.
Oh, Kigu and all them. Were they all, are you guys streaming tonight? Yeah, it's Tuesday, isn't it?
Command. All the wrong stuff. There's too many things open.
I told everyone to tell Agent that he's wrong, because he is.
Oh, you think I'm wrong? I don't know, Pixel. Pluto is going to be... It was talked about for a reason. It's going to be on a lot of top 10 lists.
Alright, I normally give shout-outs every so often here, so... but thank you so much, Pixel and Kigu, for the raids, and welcome, raiders. Thank you for joining. We're pretty close to wrapping up here, but happy to have you all on board, and happy to meet you all. And back to the train of thought I was having a minute ago, hopefully. Yes, I was talking about Time of Eve and asking if you'd ever seen that.
No, I have not, actually.
Oh, okay. That one is pretty niche and unknown. But if you have an interest in these kinds of robotics, transhumanism things, I definitely recommend checking that one out. Because it really takes a very unique look at this kind of topic, and was one of the earlier anime to very explicitly touch on it in the way that it did. But I think there's influence, here of that kind of show as well. but the tone of this show is definitely a lot different. And if I had done my list sooner, it may have actually made a spot on the list. It probably, there's a good chance it would have pushed My Home Hero off, especially because it has very similar vibes in a lot of senses. But
definitely, especially when you get to the back half, which I do hope you finish that show up. It is it's number one on my list. I would count it as a must-watch of the year.
There we go. Got a shout out for Kigurumi as well.
Yep. I tried to get it out, but I wonder if they've put in a new timer about that.
There is a timeout between them. It's like 60 seconds or something. Just enough to be irritating and make you kind of forget to do it sometimes.
Yep.
But yeah, I definitely respect it as a pick. I think art style wise, it's maybe not my art style. The art quality is definitely there, but in terms of like the character designs, that was definitely something that I wasn't huge on in Monster as well. And like some of the older similar series as well with, yeah, like I've never been into the gigantic nose meta. But if you can kind of get past that, then it's definitely a strong watch.
Yep. That definitely is a weird thing. Those old school Tetsuo classic manga that given to a man who's known for putting detail in the extreme and then giving it an adaptation to that extreme detail in high quality.
I think it's a testament to the positive that can come from a company like Netflix being involved in this kind of stuff.
Yep. A motif to the tier list, Kigu. This is our top 10. This is a personal side of that, what we consider to be the top 10 of our year. Which I'll quickly scroll through the bottom down up since we are wrapping up here.
We did take slightly different approaches to it, with me trying to be a little more objective in my scoring, and Kigu, or not Kigu, just Kigu on the brain here, and Agent taking a more personal preference approach to it.
Yeah, which for top 10 lists on the year, which can be also a big thing because once again, it comes down to, are these the shows that that stuck out to me the most? Are these the shows that are the most influential? Which you can argue either way of like, all right, do you count bias out of what you consider to be your quality? Or do you have to bake biased in because that's what went into the show to begin with? Which you can also see on this from this year with a couple of these. Like, you saw Bullbuster on my number 2, but once again, didn't even Yuki hasn't even been able to catch a single episode of that, which because from how far they've gotten to that. At the same point, Insomniacs After Dark has made her Yuki's number 4. I had to skim through a bunch of episodes. I couldn't even just sit down and let them play normally. It just was not entertaining to me. But does not count against its quality.
To be fair, it's not really the type of show that's meant to be entertaining.
Yeah. Once again, you could also argue that concept is what makes it entertaining and good to watch, too.
Also true, yes.
The worst thing any kind of show can be is boring. As your number 6 and my number 10, I think, showed off
Indeed.
Kamokatsu is a testament to that.
It was certainly not boring.
Uh,
Well, unless you have anything else to add, that pretty much wraps up the list, though.
Yep. I don't know. Is there, after discussing any of this, is there anything you would want to change on this list that you think it might have, your opinion might have been moved on?
I think, there is the potential where, like I said, if I'd done the list a little bit later, or had really gotten around to watching more stuff, there is that possibility that, Pluto may have bumped my home hero off the list. I'm not sure exactly where it would have ended up falling. Quickly gauging it, I would say it definitely wouldn't have been any higher than rank 7 for me. I can't see it pushing out anything above that for my side of the list. It definitely does deserve some credit for having such a pedigree and having the lineage of these like master works that were so defining for anime previously, but at the same time, because it is technically a continuation in a sense of the Astro Boy property, I might have excluded it from the list for that reason, just based off of my rules about established properties.
Yeah. Honestly, after talking about going through it, I think Hell's Paradise, I might have dropped that series because it came down to it looked good and it was really well made, but didn't stand out. I think I might have put Oshino no Ko on my list. I don't think, once again, I don't think it would have broken my top 5, but it might have just replaced Hell's Paradise on that thing.
Yeah, I could see that.
Probably somewhere between 6 and 8.
Yeah, I also, there's a possibility I might have, like, shifted a couple of mine up or down a notch here or there. Some of them I was a little on the fence about exactly where to put them on the list, because, all of these are really strong, and it can be kind of hard to decide which is stronger than which when you're putting them against each other. Because they're not an apples to apples comparison, right? Each series has such vastly different merits to it, that they're kind of incomparables in a lot of cases as to which is the superior thing.
That's part of the reason I did like both of us to have our own, because even going through this, you could definitely see the differences. Like, while we did our mid to low tier did have some overlap in it, it's once we got to our top, it drastically shifted.
Yep, and I think there was a certain amount of value, too, that we took different approaches in building our lists and kind of built them with different rules, which was part of what contributed to that, but also was, valuable in us kind of crafting very unique perspectives on what we did and did not include.
Yeah, because Oshino no Ko, and comparing Oshino no Ko to Pluto is a bit odd for number ones, but I think with that, we have finished up our 2023 list. I think that's a good capper for that, and I'm looking at the top 10. It was a good year for anime. It was the first time I think we've seen the genre evolve in many different aspects, as well as having classic stuff come back and be updated for our modern audience.
I think the industry is at an interesting place because we've reached a point where anime has now been around long enough that there's a retro culture developing around some of it, while also it has matured enough that it has a sizable enough audience to sustain it spreading out into these subgenres. I just really want to see in the future more talent emerge and more skills grow to support this greater breadth, because right now it feels like everyone's scrambling to pull talent from studios that are established and try to train up new people, and that's affected our ability to have more kind of top quality stuff.
Yep. No, that was part of the reason I put Bullbuster as started as high as I did. That was a fresh anime from a new studio. Yep. Studio Nut is a relatively newer company, which that has been also the interesting thing we have seen. While we are seeing people getting pulled from these studios, you're also seeing new studios be made by both veterans and new people coming into this world alike, and we are getting so many interesting things. One of the ones you did mention, the Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts, is an older, is a decades-old manga that was dragged out and is put out with a decent animation, and we are seeing, especially those old stories that had merit, dug up, as well as stories that people want to tell now. And it's going to be interesting to see where they all go.
On a final note, or at least kind of a personal or emotional one on my side, my heart definitely goes out to all those in Japan who were affected by the earthquake that we just had. And there was a lot of damage from that. And I just want to remind everyone that may impact production schedules and things like that. So be aware that we might see some series slip here and there from the aftermath of that, just as we did with the pandemic that we had recently. And it might not all be felt at once, and it might not all be in terms of something being delayed. Some of it could just be that, there's had to be some cuts in quality or something like that as a result. But just keep that in mind as you're watching your series, that, once again, great adversity is having to be overcome to produce the things that we love.
Yep. But with that, I think we're going to call this. We might be back soon with a, what to watch of winter 2024. Dear God, that number keeps going up and it keeps making me feel older.
I know.
Which we will get back to you on times on that. We need to figure that one out ourselves too. But you care if I pick the person to raid tonight, Yuki?
No, feel free.
All right. A little cozy streamer I've currently gotten in more and more touch with. I'll send it to you over on Discord. But we'll be sending you over to Sato at the Terminus Archives.
Can you post the name for me? Oh, there they are.
I should have sent it to you on Discord.
That's fine. I got it.
All right, you got it?
Yep. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I hope you had a good time, listening to the our takes and our choices here. And I hope you all came away with some, cool things to try if you haven't tried them already.
Yep. The list I'll be posting up on our several Discords as well as our Twitters. So if you are curious, go have a look there, and we will keep you up to date later. But this is going to be Agent Q signing off. Have a good night.
Bye-bye, everybody. Matane.
That's all for this episode. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, subscribe, or join me on Twitch or Twitter. Hope to see you next time on Yukikaze Gaming. Matane!